He was promised love, and given a dungeon, betrayed by his closest friends, imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit. But he didn't die in that prison. He escaped with a new name and a plan. Revenge is patient, and it remembers everything. Chapter 81. The room of the retired baker, the evening of the day on which the Count of Morcerf had left Danglars' house with feelings of shame and anger at the rejection of the projected alliance. Andrea Cavalcanti, with curled hair, mustaches in perfect order, and white gloves which fitted admirably, had entered the courtyard of the banker's house in Rue de la Chaussée-d'Antin. He had not been more than 10 minutes in the drawing-room before he drew Danglars aside into the recess of a bow window, and, after an ingenious preamble, related to him all his anxieties and cares since his noble father's departure. He acknowledged the extreme kindness which had been shown him by the banker's family, in which he had been received as a son, and where, besides, his warmest affections had found an object on which to center in Mademoiselle Danglars. Danglars listened with the most profound attention. He had expected this declaration for the last 2 or 3 days, and when at last it came his eyes glistened as much as they had lowered on listening to Morcerf. He would not, however, yield immediately to the young man's request, but made a few conscientious objections. "Are you not rather young, Andrea, to think of marrying?" "I think not, sir," replied Cavalcanti. "In Italy the nobility generally marry young. Life is so uncertain that we ought to secure happiness while it is within our reach." "Well, sir," said Danglars, "in case your proposals, which do me honor, are accepted by my wife and daughter, by whom shall the preliminary arrangements be settled? So important a negotiation should, I think, be conducted by the respective fathers of the young people. Sir, my father is a man of great foresight and prudence. Thinking that I might wish to settle in France, he left me at his departure, together with the papers establishing my identity, a letter promising, if he approved of my choice, 150,000 livres per annum from the day I was married. So far as I can judge, I suppose this to be a quarter of my father's revenue. I, said Danglars, have always intended giving my daughter 500,000 francs as her dowry. She is, besides, my sole heiress. All would then be easily arranged if the Baroness and her daughter are willing. We should command an annuity of 175,000 livres. Supposing, also, I should persuade the Marquis to give me my capital, which is not likely, but still is possible, we would place these 2 or 3 millions in your hands, whose talent might make it realize 10%. I never give more than 4% and generally only 3.5%, but to my son-in-law I would give 5 and we would share the profits. Very good, father-in-law, said Cavalcanti, yielding to his low-born nature, which would escape sometimes through the aristocratic gloss with which he sought to conceal it. Correcting himself immediately, he said, "Excuse me, sir. Hope alone makes me almost mad. What will not reality do?" "But," said Danglars, who, on his part, did not perceive how soon the conversation, which was at first disinterested, was turning to a business transaction. "There is, doubtless, a part of your fortune your father could not refuse you?" "Which?" asked the young man. "That you inherit from your mother." "Truly, from my mother, Leonora Corsinari. How much may it amount to?" "Indeed, sir," said Andrea, "I assure you I have never given the subject a thought, but I suppose it must have been at least 2 millions. Danglars felt as much overcome with joy as the miser who finds a lost treasure, or as the shipwrecked mariner who feels himself on solid ground instead of in the abyss which he expected would swallow him up. "Well, sir," said Andrea, bowing to the banker respectfully, "may I hope?" "You may not only hope," said Danglars, "but consider it a settled thing if no obstacle arises on your part." "I am indeed rejoiced," said Andrea. "But," said Danglars thoughtfully, "how is it that your patron Edmond de Monte Cristo did not make his proposal for you?" Andrea blushed imperceptibly. "I have just left the Count, sir," said he. "He is, doubtless, a delightful man but inconceivably peculiar in his ideas. He esteems me highly. He even told me he had not the slightest doubt that my father would give me the capital instead of the interest of my property. He has promised to use his influence to obtain it for me, but he also declared that he never had taken on himself the responsibility of making proposals for another, and he never would. I must, however, do him the justice to add that he assured me if ever he had regretted the repugnance he felt to such a step it was on this occasion, because he thought the projected union would be a happy and suitable one. Besides, if he will do nothing officially, he will answer any questions you propose to him. And now, continued he with one of his most charming smiles, having finished talking to the father-in-law, I must address myself to the banker. And what may you have to say to him? Said Danglars, laughing in his turn. That the day after tomorrow I shall have to draw upon you for about 4,000 francs. But the Count, expecting my bachelor's revenue could not suffice for the coming month's outlay, has offered me a draft for 20,000 francs. It bears his signature, as you see, which is all sufficient. Bring me 1,000,000 such as that, said Danglars. I shall be well pleased. Putting the draft in his pocket. Fix your own hour for tomorrow, and my cashier shall call on you with a check for 80,000 francs. At 10 o'clock then, if you please. I should like it early, as I am going into the country tomorrow. Very well, at 10 o'clock. You are still at the Hôtel des Princes? Yes. The following morning, with the banker's usual punctuality, the 80,000 francs were placed in the young man's hands, as he was on the point of starting, after having left 200 francs for Cadaris. He went out chiefly to avoid this dangerous enemy, and returned as late as possible in the evening. But scarcely had he stepped out of his carriage when the porter met him with a parcel in his hand. "Sir," said he, "that man has been here." "What man?" said Andrea carelessly, apparently forgetting him whom he but too well recollected. "Him to whom your Excellency pays that little annuity." "Oh," said Andrea, "my father's old servant. Well, you gave him the 200 francs I had left for him." "Yes, your Excellency." Andrea had expressed a wish to be thus addressed. "But," continued the porter, "he would not take them." Andrea turned pale, but as it was dark his pallor was not perceptible. "What? He would not take them?" said he with slight emotion. "For 0130 no, he wished to speak to your Excellency. I told him you were gone out, and after some dispute he believed me and gave me this letter, which he had brought with him already sealed." "Give it me," said Andrea, and he read by the light of his carriage lamp. "You know where I live. I expect you tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Andrea examined it carefully to ascertain if the letter had been opened, or if any indiscreet eyes had seen its contents. But it was so carefully folded that no one could have read it, and the seal was perfect. "Very well," said he. "Poor man, he is a worthy creature." He left the porter to ponder on these words, not knowing which most to admire, the master or the servant. "Take out the horses quickly and come up to me," said Andrea to his groom. In 2 seconds the young man had reached his room and burnt Cadaris' letter. The servant entered just as he had finished. "You are about my height, Pierre," said he. "I have that honor, your Excellency." "You had a new livery yesterday?" "Yes, sir. I have an engagement with a pretty little girl for this evening, and do not wish to be known. Lend me your livery till tomorrow. I may sleep, perhaps, at an inn." Pierre obeyed. 5 minutes after, Andrea left the hotel, completely disguised, took a cabriolet, and ordered the driver to take him to the Cheval Rouge, at Picpus. The next morning he left that inn as he had left the Hôtel des Princes without being noticed, walked down the Faubourg Saint-Antoine, along the boulevard to Rue Ménilmontant, and stopping at the door of the third house on the left looked for someone of whom to make inquiry in the porter's absence. "For whom are you looking, my fine fellow?" asked the fruiteress on the opposite side. "Monsieur Paletin, if you please, my good woman," replied Andrea. "A retired baker?" asked the fruiteress. "Exactly. He lives at the end of the yard on the left on the 3rd story." For 0132 Andrea went as she directed him, and on the 3rd floor he found a hare's paw, which, by the hasty ringing of the bell, it was evident he pulled with considerable ill temper. A moment after Cadaris' face appeared at the grating in the door. "Ah, you are punctual," said he as he drew back the door. "Confound you and your punctuality," said Andrea, throwing himself into a chair in a manner which implied that he would rather have flung it at the head of his host. "Come, come, my little fellow, don't be angry. See, I have thought about you. Look at the good breakfast we are going to have. Nothing but what you are fond of. Andrea, indeed, inhaled the scent of something cooking which was not unwelcome to him, hungry as he was. It was that mixture of fat and garlic peculiar to Provençal kitchens of an inferior order, added to that of dried fish, and above all, the pungent smell of musk and cloves. These odors escaped from 2 deep dishes which were covered and placed on a stove, and from a copper pan placed in an old iron pot. In an adjoining room Andrea saw also a tolerably clean table prepared for two bottles of wine sealed, the one with green, the other with yellow, a supply of brandy in a decanter, and a measure of fruit in a cabbage leaf, cleverly arranged on an earthenware plate. "What do you think of it, my little fellow?" said Catullus. "Aye, that smells good. You know I used to be a good cook. Do you recollect how you used to lick your fingers? You were among the first who tasted any of my dishes, and I think you relished them tolerably." While speaking, Catullus went on peeling a fresh supply of onions. "But," said Andrea ill-temperedly, "by my faith, if it was only to breakfast with you, that you disturbed me, I wish the devil had taken you." "My boy," said Catullus sententiously, "one can talk while eating, and then, you ungrateful being, you are not pleased to see an old friend? I am weeping with joy." He was truly crying, but it would have been difficult to say whether joy or the onions produced the greatest effect on the lacrimal glands of the old innkeeper of the Pont du Gard. "Hold your tongue, hypocrite," said Andrea. "You love me." "Yes, I do, or may the devil take me." "I know it is a weakness," said Catullus, "but it overpowers me. And yet it has not prevented your sending for me to play me some trick." "Come," said Catullus, wiping his large knife on his apron. "If I did not like you, do you think I should endure the wretched life you lead me? Think for a moment. You have your servant's clothes on, you therefore keep a servant. I have none and am obliged to prepare my own meals. You abuse my cookery because you dine at the table d'hôte of the Hôtel de Princes, or the Café de Paris. Well, I too could keep a servant. I too could have a Tilbury. I too could dine where I like. But why do I not? Because I would not annoy my little Benedetto. Come, just acknowledge that I could, This address was accompanied by a look which was by no means difficult to understand. "Well," said Andrea, "admitting your love, why do you want me to breakfast with you?" "That I may have the pleasure of seeing you, my little fellow." "What is the use of seeing me after we have made all our arrangements?" Dear friend," said Catullus, "are wills ever made without codicils? But you first came to breakfast, did you not? Well, sit down, and let us begin with these pilchards, and this fresh butter, which I have put on some vine leaves to please you, wicked one. Ah, yes, you look at my room, my 4 straw chairs, my images, 3 francs each. But what do you expect? This is not the Hôtel de Princes. Come, you are growing discontented. You are no longer happy. You, who only wish to live like a retired baker." Catullus sighed. "Well, what have you to say? You have seen your dream realized." "I can still say it is a dream. A retired baker, my poor Benedetto, is rich. He has an annuity." "Well, you have an annuity." "I have. For 0,134 yes, since I bring you your 200 francs. Catullus shrugged his shoulders. "It is humiliating," said he, "thus to receive money given grudgingly, an uncertain supply which may soon fail. You see, I am obliged to economize, in case your prosperity should cease. Well, my friend, fortune is inconstant, as the chaplain of the regiment said. I know your prosperity is great, you rascal. You are to marry the daughter of Danglars." "What? Of Danglars?" "Yes, to be sure. Must I say Baron Danglars? I might as well say Count Benedetto. He was an old friend of mine, and if he had not so bad a memory he ought to invite me to your wedding, seeing he came to mine." "Yes, yes, to mine. Gad, he was not so proud then. He was an underclerk to the good M. Moral. I have dined many times with him and the Count of Morcerf, so you see I have some high connections, and were I to cultivate them a little, we might meet in the same drawing-rooms. Come, your jealousy represents everything to you in the wrong light. That is all very fine, Benedetto mio, but I know what I am saying. Perhaps I may one day put on my best coat, and presenting myself at the great gate, introduce myself. Meanwhile, let us sit down and eat." Chatteris set the example and attacked the breakfast with good appetite, praising each dish he set before his visitor. The latter seemed to have resigned himself. He drew the corks, and partook largely of the fish with the garlic and fat. "Ah, mate," said Chatteris, "you are getting on better terms with your old landlord." "Faith, yes," replied Andrea, whose hunger prevailed over every other feeling. "So you like it, you rogue? So much that I wonder how a man who can cook thus can complain of hard living." "Do you see," said Chatteris, "all my happiness is marred by one thought?" "What is that?" "That I am dependent on another, I who have always gained my own livelihood honestly." "Do not let that disturb you, I have enough for two." "No, truly. You may believe me if you will. At the end of every month I am tormented by remorse." "Good Chatteris! So much so, that yesterday I would not take the 200 francs. Yes, you wished to speak to me. But was it indeed remorse, tell me?" "True remorse. And, besides, an idea had struck me." Andrea shuddered. He always did so at Chatteris' ideas. "It is miserable, do you see? Always to wait till the end of the month." "Oh," said Andrea philosophically, determined to watch his companion narrowly. "Does not life pass in waiting? Do I, for instance, fare better? Well, I wait patiently, do I not? Yes, because instead of expecting 200 wretched francs, you expect 5 or 6,000, perhaps 10, perhaps even 12, for you take care not to let anyone know the utmost. Down there, you always had little presents and Christmas boxes, which you tried to hide from your poor friend Chatteris. Fortunately, he is a cunning fellow, that friend Chatteris. There you are beginning again to ramble, to talk again and again of the past. But what is the use of teasing me with going all over that again? Ah, you are only 1 in 20, and can forget the past. I am 50, and am obliged to recollect it. But let us return to business." "Yes, I was going to say, if I were in your place, well, I would realize." "How would you realize?" "I would ask for 6 months in advance, under pretense of being able to purchase a farm. Then with my 6 months I would decamp." "Well, well," said Andrea, "that isn't a bad idea." "My dear friend," said Chatteris, "eat of my bread and take my advice. You will be none the worse off, physically or morally." "But," said Andrea, "why do you not act on the advice you gave me? Why do you not realize a 6 months, a year's advance even, and retire to Brussels? Instead of living the retired baker, you might live as a bankrupt, using his privileges. That would be very good. But how the devil would you have me retire on 1,200 francs? "Ah, Chatteris," said Andrea, "how covetous you are. 2 months ago you were dying with hunger." "The appetite grows by what it feeds on," said Chatteris, grinning and showing his teeth, like a monkey laughing or a tiger growling. "And," added he, biting off with his large white teeth an enormous mouthful of bread, "I have formed a plan." Chatteris' plans alarmed Andrea still more than his ideas. Ideas were but the germ, the plan was reality. "Let me see your plan. I dare say it is a pretty one." "Why not? Who formed the plan by which we left the establishment of M. Was it not I? And it was no bad one, I believe, since here we are." "I do not say," replied Andrea, "that you never make a good one, but let us see your plan." "Well," pursued Chatteris, "can you, without expending one sou, put me in the way of getting 15,000 francs? "No, 15,000 are not enough. I cannot again become an honest man with less than 30,000 francs." "No," replied Andrea dryly. "No, I cannot." "I do not think you understand me," replied Chatteris calmly. "I said without your laying out a sou. Do you want me to commit a robbery to spoil all my good fortune, and yours with mine, and both of us to be dragged down there again?" "It would make very little difference to me," said Chatteris. "If I were retaken, I am a poor creature to live alone, and sometimes pine for my old comrades. Not like you, heartless creature, who would be glad never to see them again." Andrea did more than tremble this time, he turned pale. "Come, Chatteris, no nonsense," said he. "Don't alarm yourself, my little Benedetto. but just point out to me some means of gaining those 30,000 francs without your assistance, and I will contrive it." "Well, I'll see. I'll try to contrive some way," said Andrea. "Meanwhile, you will raise my monthly allowance to 500 francs, my little fellow? I have a fancy, and mean to get a housekeeper." "Well, you shall have your 500 francs," said Andrea. "But it is very hard for me, my poor Catharus, you take advantage." "Bah," said Catharus, "when you have access to countless stores." One would have said Andrea anticipated his companion's words. So did his eye flash like lightning, but it was but for a moment. "True," he replied, "and my protector is very kind." "That dear protector," said Catharus. "And how much does he give you monthly?" 5,000 francs. "As many thousands as you give me hundreds. Truly, it is only bastards who are thus fortunate. 5,000 francs per month. What the devil can you do with all that?" "Oh, it is no trouble to spend that. And I am like you, I want capital." "Capital? Yes, I understand. Everyone would like capital. Well, and I shall get it." "Who will give it to you? Your prince?" "Yes, my prince. But unfortunately I must wait." "For 0138M, you must wait for what?" asked Catharus. "For his death." "The death of your prince?" "Yes." "How so?" "Because he has made his will in my favor." "Indeed?" "On my honor." "For how much?" "For 500,000. "Only that? It's little enough." "But so it is." "No, it cannot be." "Are you my friend, Catharus?" "Yes, in life or death." "Well, I will tell you a secret." "What is it?" "But remember." "Ah, pardieu, mute as a carp." "Well, I think—" Andrea stopped and looked around. "You think? Do not fear. Pardieu, we are alone. I think I have discovered my father." "Your true father?" "Yes." "Not old Cavalcanti?" "No, for he has gone again. The true one, as you say. And that father is— well, Catharus, it is Monte Cristo." "Bah!" "Yes, you understand, that explains all. He cannot acknowledge me openly, it appears, but he does it through M. Cavalcanti, and gives him 50,000 francs for it." 50,000 francs for being your father? I would have done it for half that, for 20,000, for 15,000. Why did you not think of me, ungrateful man? Did I know anything about it, when it was all done when I was down there? Ah, truly? And you say that by his will he leaves me 500,000 livres. Are you sure of it? He showed it me, but that is not all. There is a codicil, as I said just now. Probably. And in that codicil he acknowledges me. Oh, the good father, the brave father, the very honest father, said Catharus, twirling a plate in the air between his two hands. Now, say if I conceal anything from you? No, and your confidence makes you honorable in my opinion. And your princely father, is he rich, very rich? Yes, he is that. He does not himself know the amount of his fortune. Is it possible? It is evident enough to me, who am always at his house. The other day a banker's clerk brought him 50,000 francs in a portfolio about the size of your plate. Yesterday his banker brought him 100,000 francs in gold. Catharus was filled with wonder. The young man's words sounded to him like metal, and he thought he could hear the rushing of cascades of Lewis. "And you go into that house?" cried he briskly. "When I like." Catharus was thoughtful for a moment. It was easy to perceive he was revolving some unfortunate idea in his mind. Then suddenly, "How I should like to see all that," cried he. "How beautiful it must be!" "It is, in fact, magnificent," said Andrea. "And does he not live in the Champs-Élysées?" "Yes, number 30. "Ah," said Catharus. "Number 30. Yes, a fine house standing alone, between a courtyard and a garden. You must know it." "Possibly. But it is not the exterior I care for, it is the interior. What beautiful furniture there must be in it. Have you ever seen the Tuileries?" "No, well, it surpasses that. It must be worth one's while to stoop, Andrea, when that good Monte Cristo lets fall his purse." "It is not worth while to wait for that," said Andrea. Money is as plentiful in that house as fruit in an orchard. But you should take me there one day with you. How can I? On what plea? You are right. But you have made my mouth water. I must absolutely see it. I shall find a way. No nonsense, Catharus. I will offer myself as floor polisher. The rooms are all carpeted. Well, then, I must be contented to imagine it. That is the best plan, believe me. Try, at least, to give me an idea of what it is. How can I? Nothing is easier. Is it large? Middling? How is it arranged? Faith, I should require pen, ink, and paper to make a plan. They are all here, said Catharus briskly. He fetched from an old secrétaire a sheet of white paper and pen and ink. Here, said Catharus. Draw me all that on the paper, my boy. Andrea took the pen with an imperceptible smile and began. The house, as I said, is between the court and the garden. In this way, do you see? Andrea drew the garden, the court, and the house. 40142 m, high walls. Not more than 8 or 10 feet. That is not prudent, said Catharus. In the court are orange trees in pots, turf, and clumps of flowers. And no steel traps? No, the stables are on either side of the gate, which you see there. And Andrea continued his plan. Let us see the ground floor, said Catharus. On the ground floor, dining room, 2 drawing rooms, billiard room, staircase in the hall, and a little back staircase. Windows, magnificent windows, so beautiful, so large, that I believe a man of your size should pass through each frame. Why the devil have they any stairs with such windows? Luxury has everything. But shutters. Yes, but they are never used. That Count of Monte Cristo is an original, who loves to look at the sky even at night. And where do the servants sleep? Oh, they have a house to themselves. Picture to yourself a pretty coach house at the right-hand side where the ladders are kept. Well, over that coach house are the servants' rooms, with bells corresponding with the different apartments. Ah, diable! Bells, did you say? What do you mean? Oh, nothing. I only say they cost a load of money to hang. And what is the use of them, I should like to know. There used to be a dog let loose in the yard at night, but it has been taken to the house at Auteuil, to that you went to, you know. Yes, I was saying to him only yesterday, you are imprudent, Monsieur Count, for when you go to Auteuil and take your servants the house is left unprotected. Well, said he, what next? Well, next, some day you will be robbed. What did he answer? He quietly said, what do I care if I am? Andrea, he has some secrétaire with a spring. How do you know? Yes, which catches the thief in a trap and plays a tune. I was told there were such at the last exhibition. He has simply a mahogany secrétaire, in which the key is always kept. And he is not robbed? No. His servants are all devoted to him. There ought to be some money in that secrétaire? There may be. No one knows what there is. And where is it? On the first floor. Sketch me the plan of that floor, as you have done of the ground floor, my boy. That is very simple. Andrea took the pen. On the first story, do you see, there is the anteroom and the drawing room. To the right of the drawing room, a library and a study. To the left, a bedroom and a dressing room. The famous secrétaire is in the dressing room. Is there a window in the dressing room? 2. One here and one there. Andrea sketched 2 windows in the room, which formed an angle on the plan, and appeared as a small square added to the rectangle of the bedroom. Catharus became thoughtful. Does he often go to Auteuil? Added he. 2 or 3 times a week. Tomorrow, for instance, he is going to spend the day and night there. Are you sure of it? He has invited me to dine there. There's a life for you, said Catharus. A town house and a country house. That is what it is to be rich. And shall you dine there? Probably. When you dine there, do you sleep there? If I like, I am at home there. Catharus looked at the young man, as if to get at the truth from the bottom of his heart. But Andrea drew a cigar case from his pocket, took a Havana, quietly lit it, and began smoking. When do you want your 1,200 francs? Said he to Catharus. Now, if you have them. Andrea took 25 louis from his pocket. Yellow boys? Said Catullus. No, I thank you. Oh, you despise them. On the contrary, I esteem them, but will not have them. You can change them, idiot. Gold is worth 5 sous. Exactly. And he who changes them will follow friend Catullus, lay hands on him, and demand what farmers pay him their rent in gold. No nonsense, my good fellow. Silver simply, round coins with the head of some monarch or other on them. Anybody may possess a 5-franc piece. But do you suppose I carry 500 francs about with me? I should want a porter. Well, leave them with your porter. He is to be trusted. I will call for them. Today. No, tomorrow. I shall not have time today. Well, tomorrow I will leave them when I go to Auteuil. May I depend on it? Certainly. Because I shall secure my housekeeper on the strength of it. Now see here, will that be all? And will you not torment me any more? Never. Catullus had become so gloomy that Andrea feared he should be obliged to notice the change. He redoubled his gaiety and carelessness. How sprightly you are, said Catullus. One would say you were already in possession of your property. No, unfortunately. But when I do obtain it, well, I shall remember old friends. I can tell you that. Yes, since you have such a good memory. What do you want? It looks as if you were trying to fleece me. I? What an idea. I, who am going to give you another piece of good advice. What is it? To leave behind you the diamond you have on your finger. We shall both get into trouble. You will ruin both yourself and me by your folly. How so? Said Andrea. How? You put on a livery, you disguise yourself as a servant, and yet keep a diamond on your finger worth 4,000 or 5,000 francs. You guess well. I know something of diamonds. I have had some. You do well to boast of it, said Andrea, who, without becoming angry, as Catullus feared at this new extortion, quietly resigned the ring. Catullus looked so closely at it that Andrea well knew that he was examining to see if all the edges were perfect. It is a false diamond, said Catullus. You are joking now, replied Andrea. Do not be angry, we can try it. Catullus went to the window, touched the glass with it, and found it would cut. Confiteor, said Catullus, putting the diamond on his little finger. I was mistaken. But those thieves of jewelers imitate so well that it is no longer worthwhile to rob a jeweler's shop. It is another branch of industry paralyzed. Have you finished? Said Andrea. Do you want anything more? Will you have my waistcoat or my hat? Make free, now you have begun. No, you are, after all, a good companion. I will not detain you, and will try to cure myself of my ambition. But take care the same thing does not happen to you in selling the diamond you feared with the gold. I shall not sell it, do not fear. Not at least till the day after tomorrow, thought the young man. Happy rogue, said Catullus. You are going to find your servants, your horses, your carriage, and your betrothed. Yes, said Andrea. Well, I hope you will make a handsome wedding present the day you marry Mademoiselle Danglars. I have already told you it is a fancy you have taken in your head. What fortune has she? But I tell you, 1,000,000. Andrea shrugged his shoulders. Let it be 1,000,000, said Catullus. You can never have so much as I wish you. Thank you, said the young man. Oh, I wish it you with all my heart, added Catullus with his hoarse laugh. Stop. Let me show you the way. It is not worthwhile. Yes, it is. Why? Because there is a little secret, a precaution I thought it desirable to take, one of Huret and Fichet's locks, revised and improved by Gaspard Catullus. I will manufacture you a similar one when you are a capitalist. Thank you, said Andrea. I will let you know a week beforehand. They parted. Catullus remained on the landing until he had not only seen Andrea go down the 3 stories, but also cross the court. Then he returned hastily, shut his door carefully, and began to study, like a clever architect, the plan Andrea had left him. Dear Benedetto, said he, I think he will not be sorry to inherit his fortune, and he who hastens the day when he can touch his 500,000 will not be his worst friend. Chapter 82. The Burglary. The day following that on which the conversation we have related took place, the Count of Monte Cristo set out for Auteuil, accompanied by Ali and several attendants, and also taking with him some horses whose qualities he was desirous of ascertaining. He was induced to undertake this journey, of which the day before he had not even thought and which had not occurred to Andrea either, by the arrival of Bertuccio from Normandy with intelligence respecting the house and sloop. The house was ready, and the sloop which had arrived a week before lay at anchor in a small creek with her crew of 6 men, who had observed all the requisite formalities and were ready again to put to sea. The Count praised Bertuccio's zeal, and ordered him to prepare for a speedy departure, as his stay in France would not be prolonged more than a month. "Now," said he, "I may require to go in one night from Paris to Treport. Let 8 fresh horses be in readiness on the road, which will enable me to go 50 leagues in 10 hours. "Your Highness had already expressed that wish," said Bertuccio, "and the horses are ready. I have bought them and stationed them myself at the most desirable posts, that is, in villages where no one generally stops." "That's well," said Monte Cristo. "I remain here a day or two, arrange accordingly." As Bertuccio was leaving the room to give the requisite orders, Baptistin opened the door. He held a letter on a silver waiter. "What are you doing here?" asked the Count, seeing him covered with dust. "I did not send for you, I think?" Baptistin, without answering, approached the Count and presented the letter. "Important and urgent," said he. The Count opened the letter and read, "M. de Monte Cristo is apprised that this night a man will enter his house in the Champs-Élysées with the intention of carrying off some papers supposed to be in the secrétaire in the dressing-room. The Count's well-known courage will render unnecessary the aid of the police, whose interference might seriously affect him who sends this advice. The Count, by any opening from the bedroom, or by concealing himself in the dressing-room, would be able to defend his property himself. Many attendants or apparent precautions would prevent the villain from the attempt, and M. de Monte Cristo would lose the opportunity of discovering an enemy whom chance has revealed to him, who now sends this warning to the Count. A warning he might not be able to send another time, if this first attempt should fail and another be made." The Count's first idea was that this was an artifice, a gross deception, to draw his attention from a minor danger in order to expose him to a greater. He was on the point of sending the letter to the commissary of police, notwithstanding the advice of his anonymous friend, or perhaps because of that advice, when suddenly the idea occurred to him that it might be some personal enemy, whom he alone should recognize and over whom, if such were the case, he alone would gain any advantage, as Fiesco 17 had done over the Moor who would have killed him. We know the Count's vigorous and daring mind, denying anything to be impossible, with that energy which marks the great man. From his past life, from his resolution to shrink from nothing, the Count had acquired an inconceivable relish for the contests in which he had engaged, sometimes against nature, that is to say, against God, and sometimes against the world, that is, against the devil. "They do not want my papers," said Monte Cristo. "They want to kill me. They are no robbers, but assassins. I will not allow the prefect of police to interfere with my private affairs. I am rich enough, forsooth, to distribute his authority on this occasion." The Count recalled Baptistin, who had left the room after delivering the letter. "Return to Paris," said he. "Assemble the servants who remain there. I want all my household at Auteuil." "But will no one remain in the house, my lord?" asked Baptistin. "Yes, the porter. My lord will remember that the lodge is at a distance from the house. Well, the house might be stripped without his hearing the least noise." "By whom?" "By thieves." "You are a fool, M. Baptistin. Thieves might strip the house. It would annoy me less than to be disobeyed." Baptistin bowed. 40150 M. "You understand me?" said the Count. "Bring your comrades here, one and all. But let everything remain as usual, only close the shutters of the ground floor." "And those of the first floor?" "You know they are never closed. Go." The Count signified his intention of dining alone, and that no one but Ali should attend him. Having dined with his usual tranquillity and moderation, the Count, making a signal to Ali to follow him, went out by the side gate and on reaching the Bois de Boulogne turned, apparently without design towards Paris, and at twilight, found himself opposite his house in the Champs-Élysées. All was dark. One solitary, feeble light was burning in the porter's lodge, about 40 paces distant from the house, as Baptistin had said. Monte Cristo leaned against a tree, and with that scrutinizing glance which was so rarely deceived, looked up and down the avenue, examined the passers-by, and carefully looked down the neighboring streets, to see that no one was concealed. 10 minutes passed thus, and he was convinced that no one was watching him. He hastened to the side door with Ali, entered hurriedly, and by the servant's staircase, of which he had the key, gained his bedroom without opening or disarranging a single curtain, without even the porter having the slightest suspicion that the house, which he supposed empty, contained its chief occupant. Arrived in his bedroom, the Count motioned to Ali to stop. Then he passed into the dressing-room, which he examined. Everything appeared as usual, the precious secretaire in its place, and the key in the secretaire. He double-locked it, took the key, returned to the bedroom door, removed the double staple of the bolt, and went in. Meanwhile Ali had procured the arms the Count required, namely, a short carbine and a pair of double-barreled pistols, with which as sure an aim might be taken as with a single-barreled one. Thus armed, the Count held the lives of 5 men in his hands. It was about 9:30. The Count and Ali ate in haste a crust of bread and drank a glass of Spanish wine. Then Monte Cristo slipped aside one of the movable panels, which enabled him to see into the adjoining room. He had within his reach his pistols and carbine, and Ali, standing near him, held one of the small Arabian hatchets, whose form has not varied since the Crusades. Through one of the windows of the bedroom, on a line with that in the dressing-room, the Count could see into the street. 2 hours passed thus. It was intensely dark. Still Ali, thanks to his wild nature, and the Count, thanks doubtless to his long confinement, could distinguish in the darkness the slightest movement of the trees. The little light in the lodge had long been extinct. It might be expected that the attack, if indeed an attack was projected, would be made from the staircase of the ground floor, and not from a window. In Monte Cristo's opinion, the villains sought his life, not his money. It would be his bedroom they would attack, and they must reach it by the back staircase, or by the window in the dressing-room. The clock of the invalids struck 11:45. The west wind bore on its moistened gusts the doleful vibration of the 3 strokes. 4:0152 m. As the last stroke died away, the Count thought he heard a slight noise in the dressing-room. This first sound, or rather this first grinding, was followed by a second, then a third. At the fourth, the Count knew what to expect. A firm and well-practiced hand was engaged in cutting the 4 sides of a pane of glass with a diamond. The Count felt his heart beat more rapidly. Inured as men may be to danger, forewarned as they may be of peril, they understand, by the fluttering of the heart and the shuddering of the frame, the enormous difference between a dream and a reality, between the project and the execution. However, Monte Cristo only made a sign to apprise Ali, who, understanding that danger was approaching from the other side, drew nearer to his master. Monte Cristo was eager to ascertain the strength and number of his enemies. The window whence the noise proceeded was opposite the opening by which the Count could see into the dressing-room. He fixed his eyes on that window. He distinguished a shadow in the darkness. Then one of the panes became quite opaque, as if a sheet of paper were stuck on the outside. Then the square cracked without falling. Through the opening an arm was passed to find the fastening. Then a second. The window turned on its hinges, and a man entered. He was alone. "That's a daring rascal," whispered the Count. At that moment Ali touched him slightly on the shoulder. He turned. Ali pointed to the window of the room in which they were, facing the street. "I see," said he. "There are 2 of them. One does the work while the other stands guard." He made a sign to Ali not to lose sight of the man in the street, and turned to the one in the dressing-room. The glass-cutter had entered, and was feeling his way, his arms stretched out before him. At last he appeared to have made himself familiar with his surroundings. There were 2 doors, he bolted them both. When he drew near to the bedroom door, Monte Cristo expected that he was coming in, and raised one of his pistols. But he simply heard the sound of the bolts sliding in their copper rings. It was only a precaution. The nocturnal visitor, ignorant of the fact that the Count had removed the staples, might now think himself at home, and pursue his purpose with full security. Alone and free to act as he wished, The man then drew from his pocket something which the Count could not discern, placed it on a stand, then went straight to the secrétaire, felt the lock and, contrary to his expectation, found that the key was missing. But the glass cutter was a prudent man who had provided for all emergencies. The Count soon heard the rattling of a bunch of skeleton keys, such as the locksmith brings when called to force a lock, and which thieves call nightingales, doubtless from the music of their nightly song when they grind against the bolt. "Ah, ha," whispered Monte Cristo with a smile of disappointment. "He is only a thief." But the man in the dark could not find the right key. He reached the instrument he had placed on the stand, touched a spring, and immediately a pale light, just bright enough to render objects distinct, was reflected on his hands and countenance. "By heavens!" exclaimed Monte Cristo, starting back. "It is—" Ali raised his hatchet. "Don't stir," whispered Monte Cristo, "and put down your hatchet. We shall require no arms. 40154M. Then he added some words in a low tone, for the exclamation which surprise had drawn from the Count, faint as it had been, had startled the man who remained in the pose of the old knife-grinder. It was an order the Count had just given, for immediately Ali went noiselessly, and returned, bearing a black dress and a three-cornered hat. Meanwhile Monte Cristo had rapidly taken off his greatcoat, waistcoat, and shirt, and one might distinguish by the glimmering through the open panel that he wore a pliant tunic of steel mail, of which the last in France, where daggers are no longer dreaded, was worn by King Louis XVI, who feared the dagger at his breast, and whose head was cleft with a hatchet. The tunic soon disappeared under a long cassock, as did his hair under a priest's wig. The three-cornered hat over this effectually transformed the Count into an abbé. The man, hearing nothing more, stood erect, and while Monte Cristo was completing his disguise had advanced straight to the secrétaire, whose lock was beginning to crack under his nightingale. "Try again," whispered the Count, who depended on the secret spring, which was unknown to the picklock, clever as he might be. "Try again, you have a few minutes' work there," and he advanced to the window. The man whom he had seen seated on a fence had got down, and was still pacing the street. But strange as it appeared, he cared not for those who might pass from the avenue of the Champs-Élysées or by the Faubourg Saint-Honoré. His attention was engrossed with what was passing at the Count's, and his only aim appeared to be to discern every movement in the dressing-room. Monte Cristo suddenly struck his finger on his forehead, and a smile passed over his lips. Then drawing near to Ali, he whispered, "Remain here, concealed in the dark, and whatever noise you hear, whatever passes, only come in or show yourself if I call you." Ali bowed in token of strict obedience. Monte Cristo then drew a lighted taper from a closet, and when the thief was deeply engaged with his lock, silently opened the door, taking care that the light should shine directly on his face. The door opened so quietly that the thief heard no sound. But, to his astonishment, the room was suddenly illuminated. He turned. "Ah, good evening, my dear M. Cataraus," said Monte Cristo. "What are you doing here at such an hour?" 40156M. "The Abbé Busoni!" exclaimed Cataraus, and not knowing how this strange apparition could have entered when he had bolted the doors, he let fall his bunch of keys, and remained motionless and stupefied. The Count placed himself between Cataraus and the window, thus cutting off from the thief his only chance of retreat. "The Abbé Busoni!" repeated Cataraus, fixing his haggard gaze on the Count. "Yes, undoubtedly, the Abbé Busoni himself," replied Monte Cristo. "And I am very glad you recognize me, dear M. Cataraus. It proves you have a good memory, for it must be about 10 years since we last met." This calmness of Busoni, combined with his irony and boldness, staggered Cataraus. The Abbé, murmured he, clenching his fists, and his teeth chattering. "So you would rob the Count of Monte Cristo?" continued the false abbé. "Reverend sir," murmured Cataraus, seeking to regain the window, which the Count pitilessly blocked. "Reverend sir, I don't know, believe me, I take my oath." "A pane of glass out," continued the Count. "A dark lantern, a bunch of false keys, a secrétaire half-forced. It is tolerably evident." Cataraus was choking. He looked around for some corner to hide in, some way of escape. Come," continued the Count, I see you are still the same, an assassin. Reverend sir, since you know everything, you know it was not I, it was La Carconte. That was proved at the trial, since I was only condemned to the galleys. Is your time, then, expired, since I find you in a fair way to return there? No, reverend sir. I have been liberated by someone. That someone has done society a great kindness. Ah, said Chatteris, I had promised. And you are breaking your promise, interrupted Monte Cristo. Alas, yes, said Chatteris very uneasily. A bad relapse that will lead you, if I mistake not, to the place to grieve. So much the worse, so much the worse. Diavolo, as they say in my country. Reverend sir, I am impelled. Every criminal says the same thing. Poverty. Pshaw, said Busoni disdainfully. Poverty may make a man beg, steal a loaf of bread at a baker's door, but not cause him to open a secretaire in a house supposed to be inhabited. And when the jeweler Johannes had just paid you 45,000 francs for the diamond I had given you, and you killed him to get the diamond and the money both, was that also poverty? Pardon, reverend sir, said Chatteris. You have saved my life once, save me again. That is but poor encouragement. Are you alone, reverend sir, or have you their soldiers ready to seize me? I am alone, said the abbé, and I will again have pity on you, and will let you escape at the risk of the fresh miseries my weakness may lead to, if you tell me the truth. Ah, reverend sir, cried Chatteris, clasping his hands and drawing nearer to Monte Cristo. I may indeed say you are my deliverer. You mean to say you have been freed from confinement? Yes, that is true, reverend sir. Who was your liberator? An Englishman. What was his name? Lord Wilmore. I know him. I shall know if you lie. Ah, reverend sir, I tell you the simple truth. Was this Englishman protecting you? No, not me, but a young Corsican, my companion. What was this young Corsican's name? Benedetto. Is that his Christian name? He had no other. He was a foundling. Then this young man escaped with you? He did. In what way? We were working at St. Mandrier, near Toulon. Do you know St. Mandrier? I do. In the hour of rest, between noon and 1 o'clock, galley slaves having a nap after dinner. We may well pity the poor fellows, said the abbé. Nay, said Chatteris, one can't always work. One is not a dog. So much the better for the dogs, said Monte Cristo. While the rest slept, then, we went away a short distance. We severed our fetters with a file the Englishman had given us and swam away. And what is become of this Benedetto? I don't know. You ought to know. No, in truth, we parted at Hyères. And, to give more weight to his protestation, Chatteris advanced another step towards the abbé, who remained motionless in his place, as calm as ever, and pursuing his interrogation. You lie, said the abbé Busoni, with a tone of irresistible authority. Reverend sir, you lie. This man is still your friend, and you, perhaps, make use of him as your accomplice. 40160M. Oh, reverend sir, since you left Toulon, what have you lived on? Answer me. On what I could get. You lie, repeated the abbé a third time, with a still more imperative tone. Chatteris, terrified, looked at the count. You have lived on the money he has given you. True, said Chatteris. Benedetto has become the son of a great lord. How can he be the son of a great lord? A natural son. And what is that great lord's name? The Count of Monte Cristo, the very same in whose house we are. Benedetto the Count's son? Replied Monte Cristo, astonished in his turn. Well, I should think so, since the Count has found him a false father, since the Count gives him 4,000 francs a month, and leaves him 500,000 francs in his will. Ah, yes, said the factitious abbé, who began to understand. And what name does the young man bear meanwhile? Andrea Cavalcanti. Is it, then, that young man whom my friend the Count of Monte Cristo has received into his house, and who is going to marry Mademoiselle Danglars? Exactly. And you suffer that, you wretch? You, who know his life and his crime? "Why should I stand in a comrade's way?" said Catullus. "You are right. It is not you who should apprise M. Danglars, it is I." "Do not do so, reverend sir." "Why not?" "Because you would bring us to ruin. And you think that to save such villains as you I will become an abettor of their plot, an accomplice in their crimes?" "Reverend sir," said Catullus, drawing still nearer, "I will expose all." "To whom?" "To M. Danglars." "By heaven!" cried Catullus, drawing from his waistcoat an open knife, and striking the Count in the breast. "You shall disclose nothing, reverend sir." To Catullus' great astonishment, the knife, instead of piercing the Count's breast, flew back blunted. At the same moment the Count seized with his left hand the assassin's wrist, and wrung it with such strength that the knife fell from his stiffened fingers, and Catullus uttered a cry of pain. But the Count, disregarding his cry, continued to wring the bandit's wrist, until, his arm being dislocated, he fell first on his knees, then flat on the floor. The Count then placed his foot on his head, saying, "I know not what restrains me from crushing thy skull, rascal." "Ah, mercy, mercy!" cried Catullus. The Count withdrew his foot. 40162 M. "Rise," said he. Catullus rose. "What a wrist you have, reverend sir," said Catullus, stroking his arm, all bruised by the fleshy pincers which had held it. "What a wrist!" "Silence! God gives me strength to overcome a wild beast like you. In the name of that God I act. Remember that wretch, and to spare thee at this moment is still serving him." "Oh," said Catullus, groaning with pain, "take this pen and paper, and write what I dictate." "I don't know how to write, reverend sir." "You lie. Take this pen, and write." Catullus, awed by the superior power of the abbé, sat down and wrote, "Sir, the man whom you are receiving at your house, and to whom you intend to marry your daughter, is a felon who escaped with me from confinement at Toulon. He was number 59, and I number 58. He was called Benedetto, but he is ignorant of his real name, having never known his parents." "Sign it," continued the Count. "But would you ruin me?" "If I sought your ruin, fool, I should drag you to the first guardhouse. Besides, when that note is delivered, in all probability you will have no more to fear." "Sign it, then." Catullus signed it. The address: "To Monsieur the Baron Danglars, banker, Rue de la Chaussée d'Antin." Catullus wrote the address. The abbé took the note. "Now," said he, "that suffices, begone." "Which way?" "The way you came." "You wish me to get out at that window?" "You got in very well." "Oh, you have some design against me, reverend sir." "Idiot! What design can I have?" "Why, then, not let me out by the door." "What would be the advantage of waking the porter?" "Ah, reverend sir, tell me, do you wish me dead?" "I wish what God wills." "But swear that you will not strike me as I go down." "Cowardly fool! What do you intend doing with me?" "I ask you, what can I do? I have tried to make you a happy man, and you have turned out a murderer." "Oh, monsieur," said Catullus, "make one more attempt, try me once more." "I will," said the Count. "Listen, you know if I may be relied on." "Yes," said Catullus, "if you arrive safely at home. What have I to fear, except from you? If you reach your home safely, leave Paris, leave France, and wherever you may be, so long as you conduct yourself well, I will send you a small annuity. For if you return home safely, then—" "Then?" asked Catullus, shuddering. 40164 M. "Then I shall believe God has forgiven you, and I will forgive you too." "As true as I am a Christian," stammered Catullus. "You will make me die of fright." "Now begone," said the Count, pointing to the window. Catullus, scarcely yet relying on this promise, put his legs out of the window and stood on the ladder. "Now go down," said the abbé, folding his arms. Understanding he had nothing more to fear from him, Catullus began to go down. Then the Count brought the taper to the window, that it might be seen in the Champs-Élysées that a man was getting out of the window while another held a light. "What are you doing, reverend sir? Suppose a watchman should pass." and he blew out the light. He then descended, but it was only when he felt his foot touch the ground that he was satisfied of his safety. Monte Cristo returned to his bedroom and, glancing rapidly from the garden to the street, he saw first Catarus, who after walking to the end of the garden, fixed his ladder against the wall at a different part from where he came in. The Count then, looking over into the street, saw the man who appeared to be waiting run in the same direction, and place himself against the angle of the wall where Catarus would come over. Catarus climbed the ladder slowly, and looked over the coping to see if the street was quiet. No one could be seen or heard. The clock of the Invalides struck 1. Then Catarus sat astride the coping, and drawing up his ladder passed it over the wall. Then he began to descend, or rather to slide down by the 2 stanchions, which he did with an ease which proved how accustomed he was to the exercise. But once started, he could not stop. In vain did he see a man start from the shadow when he was halfway down. In vain did he see an arm raised as he touched the ground. Before he could defend himself, that arm struck him so violently in the back that he let go the ladder, crying, "Help!" A second blow struck him almost immediately in the side, and he fell, calling, "Help! Murder!" Then, as he rolled on the ground, his adversary seized him by the hair and struck him a third blow in the chest. This time Catarus endeavored to call again, but he could only utter a groan, and he shuddered as the blood flowed from his 3 wounds. The assassin, finding that he no longer cried out, lifted his head up by the hair. His eyes were closed, and the mouth was distorted. The murderer, supposing him dead, let fall his head and disappeared. Then Catarus, feeling that he was leaving him, raised himself on his elbow, and with a dying voice cried with great effort, "Murder! I am dying! Help! Reverend sir! Help!" This mournful appeal pierced the darkness. The door of the back staircase opened, then the side gate of the garden, and Ali and his master were on the spot with lights. Chapter 83. The Hand of God. Catarus continued to call piteously, "Help! Reverend sir, help!" "What is the matter?" asked Monte Cristo. "Help!" cried Catarus. "I am murdered. We are here. Take courage. Ah, it's all over. You are come too late, you are come to see me die. What blows, what blood!" He fainted. Ali and his master conveyed the wounded man into a room. Monte Cristo motioned to Ali to undress him, and he then examined his dreadful wounds. "My God!" he exclaimed. "Thy vengeance is sometimes delayed, but only that it may fall the more effectually." Ali looked at his master for further instructions. "Bring here immediately the king's attorney, M. de Villefort, who lives in the Faubourg Saint-Honoré. As you pass the lodge, wake the porter and send him for a surgeon." Ali obeyed, leaving the abbé alone with Catarus, who had not yet revived. When the wretched man again opened his eyes, the Count looked at him with a mournful expression of pity, and his lips moved as if in prayer. "A surgeon, reverend sir, a surgeon," said Catarus. "I have sent for one," replied the abbé. "I know he cannot save my life, but he may strengthen me to give my evidence." "Against whom?" "Against my murderer." "Did you recognize him?" "Yes. It was Benedetto." "The young Corsican?" "Himself." "Your comrade?" "Yes. After giving me the plan of this house, doubtless hoping I should kill the Count and he thus become his heir, or that the Count would kill me and I should be out of his way, he waylaid me and has murdered me. I have also sent for the procureur. He will not come in time. I feel my life fast ebbing." "Wait a moment," said Monte Cristo. He left the room and returned in 5 minutes with a file. The dying man's eyes were all the time riveted on the door, through which he hoped succor would arrive. "Hasten, reverend sir, hasten, I shall faint again." Monte Cristo approached, and dropped on his purple lips 3 or 4 drops of the contents of the phial. Catarus drew a deep breath. "Oh," said he, "that is life to me, more. 2 drops more would kill you," replied the abbé. "Oh, send for someone to whom I can denounce the wretch. Shall I write your deposition? You can sign it." Yes, said Catarus, and his eyes glistened at the thought of this posthumous revenge. Monte Cristo wrote, "I die, murdered by the Corsican Benedetto, my comrade in the galleys at Toulon, number 59. Quick, quick, said Catullus, or I shall be unable to sign it." Monte Cristo gave the pen to Catullus, who collected all his strength, signed it, and fell back on his bed, saying, "You will relate all the rest, reverend sir. You will say he calls himself Andrea Cavalcanti. He lodges at the Hotel de Princes. Oh, I am dying." He again fainted. The abbé made him smell the contents of the phial, and he again opened his eyes. His desire for revenge had not forsaken him. "Ah, you will tell all I have said, will you not, reverend sir?" "Yes, and much more." "What more will you say?" "I will say he had doubtless given you the plan of this house, in the hope the Count would kill you. I will say, likewise, he had apprised the Count, by a note, of your intention, and, the Count being absent, I read the note and sat up to await you." "And he will be guillotined, will he not?" said Catullus. "Promise me that, and I will die with that hope." "I will say," continued the Count, "that he followed and watched you the whole time, and when he saw you leave the house, ran to the angle of the wall to conceal himself. Did you see all that? Remember my words. If you return home safely, I shall believe God has forgiven you, and I will forgive you also." "And you did not warn me," cried Catullus, raising himself on his elbows. "You knew I should be killed on leaving this house, and did not warn me." 40168M. "No, for I saw God's justice placed in the hands of Benedetto, and should have thought it sacrilege to oppose the designs of Providence." "God's justice! Speak not of it, reverend sir. If God were just, you know how many would be punished who now escape." "Patience," said the abbé, in a tone which made the dying man shudder. "Have patience." Catullus looked at him with amazement. "Besides," said the abbé, "God is merciful to all as he has been to you. He is first a father, then a judge." "Do you then believe in God?" said Catullus. "Had I been so unhappy as not to believe in him until now," said Monte Cristo, "I must believe on seeing you." Catullus raised his clenched hands towards heaven. "Listen," said the abbé, extending his hand over the wounded man, as if to command him to believe. "This is what the God in whom, on your deathbed, you refuse to believe has done for you. He gave you health, strength, regular employment, even friends, a life, in fact, which a man might enjoy with a calm conscience. Instead of improving these gifts, rarely granted so abundantly, this has been your course. You have given yourself up to sloth and drunkenness, and in a fit of intoxication have ruined your best friend." "Help!" cried Catullus. "I require a surgeon, not a priest. Perhaps I am not mortally wounded. I may not die. Perhaps they can yet save my life. Your wounds are so far mortal that, without the 3 drops I gave you, you would now be dead." "Listen, then." "Ah," murmured Catullus, "what a strange priest you are. You drive the dying to despair instead of consoling them." "Listen," continued the abbé. "When you had betrayed your friend, God began not to strike, but to warn you. Poverty overtook you. You had already passed half your life in coveting that which you might have honorably acquired, and already you contemplated crime under the excuse of want, when God worked a miracle in your behalf, sending you, by my hands, a fortune brilliant, indeed, for you who had never possessed any. But this unexpected, unhoped for, unheard of fortune sufficed you no longer when you once possessed it. You wished to double it, and how? By a murder. You succeeded, and then God snatched it from you, and brought you to justice." "It was not I who wished to kill the Jew," said Catullus. "It was La Carconte." "Yes," said Monte Cristo, "and God. I cannot say injustice, for his justice would have slain you. But God, in his mercy, spared your life. Pardon you, to transport me for life. How merciful! You thought it a mercy then, miserable wretch. The coward who feared death rejoiced at perpetual disgrace. For like all galley slaves, you said, I may escape from prison, I cannot from the grave. And you said truly, the way was opened for you unexpectedly. An Englishman visited Toulon, who had vowed to rescue 2 men from infamy, and his choice fell on you and your companion. You received a second fortune, money and tranquility were restored to you, and you, who had been condemned to a felon's life, might live as other men. Then, wretched creature, then you tempted God a third time. I have not enough, you said, when you had more than you before possessed, and you committed a third crime without reason, without excuse. God is wearied. He has punished you. Catullus was fast sinking. Give me drink, said he. I thirst, I burn. Monte Cristo gave him a glass of water. And yet that villain Benedetto will escape. No one, I tell you, will escape. Benedetto will be punished. Then you too will be punished, for you did not do your duty as a priest. You should have prevented Benedetto from killing me. I, said the Count, with a smile which petrified the dying man, when you had just broken your knife against the coat of mail which protected my breast. Yet perhaps if I had found you humble and penitent, I might have prevented Benedetto from killing you. But I found you proud and bloodthirsty, and I left you in the hands of God. I do not believe there is a God, howled Catullus. You do not believe it, you lie, you lie. Silence, said the abbé. You will force the last drop of blood from your veins. What? You do not believe in God when he is striking you dead? You will not believe in him, who requires but a prayer, a word, a tear, and he will forgive? God, who might have directed the assassin's dagger so as to end your career in a moment, has given you this quarter of an hour for repentance. Reflect, then, wretched man, and repent. No, said Catullus. No, I will not repent. There is no God. There is no providence. All comes by chance. There is a providence. There is a God, said Monte Cristo, of whom you are a striking proof as you lie in utter despair, denying him, while I stand before you, rich, happy, safe, and entreating that God in whom you endeavor not to believe, while in your heart you still believe in him. But who are you, then? Asked Catullus, fixing his dying eyes on the Count. Look well at me, said Monte Cristo, putting the light near his face. Well, the Abbé Busoni. Monte Cristo took off the wig which disfigured him, and let fall his black hair, which added so much to the beauty of his pallid features. Oh, said Catullus, thunderstruck, but for that black hair, I should say you were the Englishman Lord Wilmore. I am neither the Abbé Busoni nor Lord Wilmore, said Monte Cristo. Think again. Do you not recollect me? There was a magic effect in the Count's words, which once more revived the exhausted powers of the miserable man. Yes, indeed, said he. I think I have seen you and known you formerly. Yes, Catullus, you have seen me. You knew me once. Who then are you? And why, if you knew me, do you let me die? Because nothing can save you, your wounds are mortal. Had it been possible to save you, I should have considered it another proof of God's mercy, and I would again have endeavored to restore you, I swear by my father's tomb. By your father's tomb, said Catullus, supported by a supernatural power, and half raising himself to see more distinctly the man who had just taken the oath which all men hold sacred. Who, then, are you? The Count had watched the approach of death. He knew this was the last struggle. He approached the dying man, and, leaning over him with a calm and melancholy look, he whispered, I am, and his almost closed lips uttered a name so low that the Count himself appeared afraid to hear it. Catullus, who had raised himself on his knees and stretched out his arm, tried to draw back, then clasping his hands and raising them with a desperate effort, "Oh, my God," said he, "pardon me for having denied thee. Thou dost exist, thou art indeed man's father in heaven and his judge on earth. My God, my Lord, I have long despised thee. Pardon me, my God. Receive me, oh my Lord." Catullus sighed deeply and fell back with a groan. The blood no longer flowed from his wounds. He was dead. "One," said the Count mysteriously, his eyes fixed on the corpse, disfigured by so awful a death. 10 minutes afterwards the surgeon and the procureur arrived, the one accompanied by the porter, the other by Ali, and were received by the Abbé Busoni, who was praying by the side of the corpse. Chapter 84. Beecham. The daring attempt to rob the Count was the topic of conversation throughout Paris for the next fortnight. The dying man had signed a deposition declaring Benedetto to be the assassin. The police had orders to make the strictest search for the murderer. Cadaverous knife, dark lantern, bunch of keys and clothing, excepting the waistcoat which could not be found, were deposited at the registry. The corpse was conveyed to the morgue. The Count told everyone that this adventure had happened during his absence at Auteuil, and that he only knew what was related by the Abbé Busoni, who that evening, by mere chance, had requested to pass the night in his house, to examine some valuable books in his library. Bertuccio alone turned pale whenever Benedetto's name was mentioned in his presence. But there was no reason why anyone should notice his doing so. Villefort, being called on to prove the crime, was preparing his brief with the same ardor that he was accustomed to exercise when required to speak in criminal cases. But 3 weeks had already passed, and the most diligent search had been unsuccessful. The attempted robbery and the murder of the robber by his comrade were almost forgotten in anticipation of the approaching marriage of Mademoiselle Danglars to the Count Andrea Cavalcanti. It was expected that this wedding would shortly take place, as the young man was received at the banker's as the betrothed. Letters had been dispatched to M. Cavalcanti, as the Count's father, who highly approved of the union, regretted his inability to leave Parma at that time, and promised a wedding gift of 150,000 livres. It was agreed that the 3 millions should be entrusted to Danglars to invest. Some persons had warned the young man of the circumstances of his future father-in-law, who had of late sustained repeated losses, but with sublime disinterestedness and confidence the young man refused to listen, or to express a single doubt to the Baron. The Baron adored Count Andrea Cavalcanti, not so Mademoiselle Eugénie Danglars. With an instinctive hatred of matrimony, she suffered Andrea's attentions in order to get rid of Morcerf. But when Andrea urged his suit, she betrayed an entire dislike to him. The Baron might possibly have perceived it, but, attributing it to a caprice, feigned ignorance. The delay demanded by Beauchamp had nearly expired. Morcerf appreciated the advice of Monte Cristo to let things die away of their own accord. No one had taken up the remark about the general, and no one had recognized in the officer who betrayed the castle of Yanina the noble count in the House of Peers. Albert, however, felt no less insulted. The few lines which had irritated him were certainly intended as an insult. Besides, the manner in which Beauchamp had closed the conference left a bitter recollection in his heart. He cherished the thought of the duel, hoping to conceal its true cause even from his seconds. Beauchamp had not been seen since the day he visited Albert, and those of whom the latter inquired always told him he was out on a journey which would detain him some days. Where he was no one knew. One morning Albert was awakened by his valet de chambre, who announced Beauchamp. Albert rubbed his eyes, ordered his servant to introduce him into the small smoking room on the ground floor, dressed himself quickly, and went down. He found Beauchamp pacing the room. On perceiving him, Beauchamp stopped. "Your arrival here, without waiting my visit at your house today, looks well, sir," said Albert. "Tell me, may I shake hands with you, saying, 'Beauchamp, acknowledge you have injured me and retain my friendship,' or must I simply propose to you a choice of arms?" "Albert," said Beauchamp, with a look of sorrow which stupefied the young man, "let us first sit down and talk." "Rather, sir, before we sit down, I must demand your answer." "Albert," said the journalist, "these are questions which it is difficult to answer. I will facilitate it by repeating the question. Will you, or will you not, retract?" "Morcerf, it is not enough to answer yes or no to questions which concern the honor, the social interest, and the life of such a man as Lieutenant General the Count of Morcerf, peer of France. What must then be done? 40174M. What I have done, Albert. I reasoned thus: money, time, and fatigue are nothing compared with the reputation and interests of a whole family. Probabilities will not suffice. Only facts will justify a deadly combat with a friend. If I strike with the sword, or discharge the contents of a pistol at man with whom, for 3 years, I have been on terms of intimacy, I must, at least, know why I do so. I must meet him with a heart at ease, and that quiet conscience which a man needs when his own arm must save his life." "Well," said Morcerf impatiently, "what does all this mean?" "It means that I have just returned from Yanina." "From Yanina?" "Yes. Impossible. Here is my passport. Examine the visa: Geneva, Milan, Venice, Trieste, Delvino, Yanina. Will you believe the government of a republic, a kingdom, and an empire? Albert cast his eyes on the passport, then raised them in astonishment to Beecham. You have been to Yanina? Said he. Albert, had you been a stranger, a foreigner, a simple lord, like that Englishman who came to demand satisfaction 3 or 4 months since, and whom I killed to get rid of, I should not have taken this trouble. But I thought this mark of consideration due to you. I took a week to go, another to return, 4 days of quarantine, and 48 hours to stay there. That makes 3 weeks. I returned last night, and here I am. What circumlocution! How long you are before you tell me what I most wish to know. Because, in truth, Albert, you hesitate? Yes, I fear. You fear to acknowledge that your correspondent has deceived you? Oh, no self-love, Beecham. Acknowledge it, Beecham. Your courage cannot be doubted. Not so, murmured the journalist. On the contrary, Albert turned frightfully pale. He endeavored to speak, but the words died on his lips. My friend, said Beecham in the most affectionate tone, I should gladly make an apology, but alas! But what? The paragraph was correct, my friend. What? That French officer. Yes. Fernand. Yes. The traitor who surrendered the castle of the man in whose service he was. Pardon me, my friend. That man was your father. Albert advanced furiously towards Beecham, but the latter restrained him more by a mild look than by his extended hand. My friend, said he, here is a proof of it. 40176M. Albert opened the paper. It was an attestation of 4 notable inhabitants of Yanina, proving that Colonel Fernand Mondego, in the service of Ali Tepelini, had surrendered the castle for 2 million crowns. The signatures were perfectly legal. Albert tottered and fell overpowered in a chair. It could no longer be doubted. The family name was fully given. After a moment's mournful silence, his heart overflowed, and he gave way to a flood of tears. Beecham, who had watched with sincere pity the young man's paroxysm of grief, approached him. Now, Albert, said he, you understand me, do you not? I wish to see all, and to judge of everything for myself, hoping the explanation would be in your father's favor, and that I might do him justice. But, on the contrary, the particulars which are given prove that Fernand Mondego, raised by Ali Pasha to the rank of Governor-General, is no other than Count Fernand of Morcerf. Then, recollecting the honor you had done me in admitting me to your friendship, I hastened to you. Albert, still extended on the chair, covered his face with both hands, as if to prevent the light from reaching him. I hastened to you, continued Beecham, to tell you, Albert, that in this changing age, the faults of a father cannot revert upon his children. Few have passed through this revolutionary period, in the midst of which we were born, without some stain of infamy or blood to soil the uniform of the soldier, or the gown of the magistrate. Now I have these proofs, Albert, and I am in your confidence. No human power can force me to a duel which your own conscience would reproach you with as criminal, but I come to offer you what you can no longer demand of me. Do you wish these proofs, these attestations, which I alone possess, to be destroyed? Do you wish this frightful secret to remain with us? Confide it to me, it shall never escape my lips. Say, Albert, my friend, do you wish it? Albert threw himself on Beauchamp's neck. Ah, noble fellow, cried he. Take these, said Beecham, presenting the papers to Albert. Albert seized them with a convulsive hand, tore them in pieces, and trembling lest the least vestige should escape and one day appear to confront him, he approached the waxlight, always kept burning for cigars, and burned every fragment. Dear, excellent friend, murmured Albert, still burning the papers. Let all be forgotten as a sorrowful dream, said Beecham. Let it vanish as the last sparks from the blackened paper, and disappear as the smoke from those silent ashes. Yes, yes, said Albert, and may there remain only the eternal friendship which I promised to my deliverer, which shall be transmitted to our children's children, and shall always remind me that I owe my life and the honor of my name to you. For had this been known, O Beecham, I should have destroyed myself, or, no, my poor mother, I could not have killed her by the same blow. I should have fled from my country. Dear Albert, said Beauchamp. But this sudden and factitious joy soon forsook the young man, and was succeeded by a still greater grief. Well, said Beauchamp, what still oppresses you, my friend? 40178M. I am broken-hearted, said Albert. Listen, Beauchamp. I cannot thus, in a moment, relinquish the respect, the confidence, and pride with which a father's untarnished name inspires a son. Oh, Beauchamp, Beauchamp, how shall I now approach mine? Shall I draw back my forehead from his embrace, or withhold my hand from his? I am the most wretched of men. Ah, my mother, my poor mother, said Albert, gazing through his tears at his mother's portrait. If you know this, how much must you suffer? Come, said Beauchamp, taking both his hands. Take courage, my friend. But how came that first note to be inserted in your journal? Some unknown enemy, an invisible foe, has done this. The more must you fortify yourself, Albert. Let no trace of emotion be visible on your countenance. Bear your grief as the cloud bears within it ruin and death, a fatal secret, known only when the storm bursts. Go, my friend. Reserve your strength for the moment when the crash shall come. 40179M. You think, then, all is not over yet? Said Albert, horror-stricken. I think nothing, my friend, but all things are possible. By the way, what? Said Albert, seeing that Beauchamp hesitated. Are you going to marry Mademoiselle Danglars? Why do you ask me now? Because the rupture or fulfillment of this engagement is connected with the person of whom we were speaking. How? Said Albert, whose brow reddened. You think M. Danglars. I ask you only how your engagement stands? Pray put no construction on my words. I do not mean they should convey, and give them no undue weight. No, said Albert. The engagement is broken off. Well, said Beauchamp. Then, seeing the young man was about to relapse into melancholy, let us go out, Albert, said he. A ride in the wood in the phaeton or on horseback will refresh you. We will then return to breakfast, and you shall attend to your affairs and I to mine. Willingly, said Albert. But let us walk. I think a little exertion would do me good. The two friends walked out on the fortress. When they arrived at the Madeleine, since we are out, said Beauchamp, let us call on M. de Monte Cristo. He is admirably adapted to revive one's spirits, because he never interrogates, and in my opinion those who ask no questions are the best comforters. Gladly, said Albert. Let us call. I love him. Chapter 85. The Journey. Monte Cristo uttered a joyful exclamation on seeing the young men together. "Ah-ha!" said he. "I hope all is over, explained and settled." "Yes," said Beauchamp. "The absurd reports have died away, and should they be renewed, I would be the first to oppose them. So let us speak no more of it." "Albert will tell you," replied the Count, "that I gave him the same advice. Look," added he, "I am finishing the most execrable morning's work." "What is it?" said Albert. "Arranging your papers, apparently." "My papers, thank God, no. My papers are all in capital order, because I have none but M. Cavalcantes." "M. Cavalcantes?" asked Beauchamp. "Yes. Do you not know that this is a young man whom the Count is introducing?" said Morcerf. "Let us not misunderstand each other," replied Monte Cristo. "I introduce no one, and certainly not M. Cavalcanti." "And who," said Albert with a forced smile, "is to marry Mademoiselle Danglars instead of me, which grieves me cruelly." "What, Cavalcanti is going to marry Mademoiselle Danglars?" asked Beauchamp. "Certainly. Do you come from the end of the world?" said Monte Cristo. "You, a journalist, the husband of renown? It is the talk of all Paris." "And you, Count, have made this match?" asked Beauchamp. "I? Silence, purveyor of gossip, do not spread that report. I make a match? No, you do not know me. I have done all in my power to oppose it." "Ah, I understand," said Beauchamp. "On our friend Albert's account." "On my account?" said the young man. "Oh, no, indeed, the Count will do me the justice to assert that I have, on the contrary, always entreated him to break off my engagement, and happily it is ended. The Count pretends I have not him to thank. So be it, I will erect an altar Deo ignoto. Listen, said Monte Cristo. I have had little to do with it, for I am at variance both with the father-in-law and the young man. There is only Mademoiselle Eugenie, who appears but little charmed with the thoughts of matrimony, and who, seeing how little I was disposed to persuade her to renounce her dear liberty, retains any affection for me. And do you say this wedding is at hand? Oh yes, in spite of all I could say. I do not know the young man. He is said to be of good family and rich, but I never trust to vague assertions. I have warned M. Danglars of it till I am tired, but he is fascinated with his Lucanese. I have even informed him of a circumstance I consider very serious. The young man was either charmed by his nurse, stolen by gypsies, or lost by his tutor, I scarcely know which. But I do know his father lost sight of him for more than 10 years. What he did during these 10 years, God only knows. Well, all that was useless. They have commissioned me to write to the major to demand papers, and here they are. I send them, but like Pilate, washing my hands. And what does Mademoiselle d'Armilly say to you for robbing her of her pupil? Oh, well, I don't know. But I understand that she is going to Italy. Madame Danglars asked me for letters of recommendation for the impresarii. I gave her a few lines for the director of the Valle Theatre, who is under some obligation to me. But what is the matter, Albert? You look dull. Are you, after all, unconsciously in love with Mademoiselle Eugenie? I am not aware of it, said Albert, smiling sorrowfully. Beauchamp turned to look at some paintings. But, continued Monte Cristo, you are not in your usual spirits? I have a dreadful headache, said Albert. Well, my dear Viscount, said Monte Cristo, I have an infallible remedy to propose to you. What is that? Asked the young man. A change. Indeed? Said Albert. Yes, and as I am just now excessively annoyed, I shall go from home. Shall we go together? You annoyed, Count? Said Beauchamp. And by what? Ah, you think very lightly of it. I should like to see you with a brief preparing in your house. What brief? The one M. de Villefort is preparing against my amiable assassin. Some brigand escaped from the gallows apparently. True, said Beauchamp. I saw it in the paper. Who is this Caterus? Some Provençal, it appears. De Villefort heard of him at Marseilles, and M. Danglars recollects having seen him. Consequently, the procureur is very active in the affair, and the prefect of police very much interested. And, thanks to that interest, for which I am very grateful, they send me all the robbers of Paris and the neighborhood, under pretense of their being Caterus murderers, so that in 3 months, if this continues, every robber and assassin in France will have the plan of my house at his fingers' ends. I am resolved to desert them and go to some remote corner of the earth, and shall be happy if you will accompany me, Viscount. Willingly. Then it is settled? Yes, but where? I have told you, where the air is pure, where every sound soothes, where one is sure to be humbled, however proud may be his nature. I love that humiliation. I, who am master of the universe, as was Augustus. But where are you really going? To sea, Viscount, you know I am a sailor. I was rocked when an infant in the arms of old Ocean, and on the bosom of the beautiful Amphitrite. I have sported with the green mantle of the one and the azure robe of the other. I love the sea as a mistress, and pine if I do not often see her. Let us go, Count. To sea? Yes. You accept my proposal? I do. Well, Viscount, there will be in my courtyard this evening a good traveling britska, with 4 post-horses, in which one may rest as in a bed. Beauchamp, it holds for very well. Will you accompany us? Thank you. I have just returned from sea. What? You have been to sea? Yes. I have just made a little excursion to the Borromean Islands. 18. What of that? Come with us, said Albert. No, dear Morcerf. You know I only refuse when the thing is impossible. Besides, it is important, added he in a low tone, that I should remain in Paris just now to watch the paper. Ah, you are a good and an excellent friend, said Albert. Yes, you are right. Watch Beauchamp, and try to discover the enemy who made this disclosure. Albert and Beauchamp parted. the last pressure of their hands expressing what their tongues could not before a stranger. "Beecham is a worthy fellow," said Monte Cristo when the journalist was gone. "Is he not, Albert?" "Yes, and a sincere friend. I love him devotedly. But now we are alone, although it is immaterial to me. Where are we going?" "Into Normandy, if you like." "Delightful. Shall we be quite retired? Have no society, no neighbors? Our companions will be riding horses, dogs to hunt with, and a fishing boat. Exactly what I wish for. I will apprise my mother of my intention, and return to you. But shall you be allowed to go into Normandy?" "I may go where I please." "Yes, I am aware you may go alone, since I once met you in Italy. But to accompany the mysterious Monte Cristo? You forget, Count, that I have often told you of the deep interest my mother takes in you." "Woman is fickle," said Francis I. "Woman is like a wave of the sea," said Shakespeare. Both the great king and the great poet ought to have known woman's nature well. Woman's, yes. My mother is not woman, but a woman. As I am only a humble foreigner, you must pardon me if I do not understand all the subtle refinements of your language. What I mean to say is that my mother is not quick to give her confidence, but when she does she never changes." "Ah, yes, indeed," said Monte Cristo with a sigh. "And do you think she is in the least interested in me? I repeat it, you must really be a very strange and superior man, for my mother is so absorbed by the interest you have excited, that when I am with her she speaks of no one else." "And does she try to make you dislike me?" "On the contrary, she often says, 'Morcerf, I believe the Count has a noble nature. Try to gain his esteem.'" "Indeed?" said Monte Cristo, sighing. "You see, then," said Albert, "that instead of opposing, she will encourage me. Adieu, then, until 5 o'clock. Be punctual, and we shall arrive at 12 or 1. "At Treport?" "Yes, or in the neighborhood." "But can we travel 48 leagues in 8 hours?" "Easily," said Monte Cristo. "You are certainly a prodigy. You will soon not only surpass the railway, which would not be very difficult in France, but even the telegraph. But, Viscount, since we cannot perform the journey in less than 7 or 8 hours, do not keep me waiting." "Do not fear, I have little to prepare." Monte Cristo smiled as he nodded to Albert, then remained a moment absorbed in deep meditation. But passing his hand across his forehead as if to dispel his reverie, he rang the bell twice and Bertuccio entered. "Bertuccio," said he, "I intend going this evening to Normandy instead of tomorrow or the next day. You will have sufficient time before 5 o'clock. Dispatch a messenger to apprise the grooms at the first station. M. de Morcerf will accompany me." Bertuccio obeyed and dispatched a courier to Pontoise to say the traveling carriage would arrive at 6 o'clock. From Pontoise another express was sent to the next stage, and in 6 hours all the horses stationed on the road were ready. Before his departure, the Count went to Haydée's apartments, told her his intention, and resigned everything to her care. Albert was punctual. The journey soon became interesting from its rapidity, of which Morcerf had formed no previous idea. "Truly," said Monte Cristo, "with your post-horses going at the rate of 2 leagues an hour, and that absurd law that one traveler shall not pass another without permission, so that an invalid or ill-tempered traveler may detain those who are well and active, it is impossible to move. I escape this annoyance by traveling with my own postilion and horses. Do I not, Ollie?" The Count put his head out of the window and whistled, and the horses appeared to fly. The carriage rolled with a thundering noise over the pavement, and everyone turned to notice the dazzling meteor. Ollie, smiling, repeated the sound, grasped the reins with a firm hand, and spurred his horses, whose beautiful manes floated in the breeze. This child of the desert was in his element, and with his black face and sparkling eyes appeared, in the cloud of dust he raised, like the genius of the simoom and the god of the hurricane. "I never knew till now the delight of speed," said Morcerf, and the last cloud disappeared from his brow. "But where the devil do you get such horses? Are they made to order?" "Precisely," said the Count. 6 years since I bought a horse in Hungary remarkable for its swiftness. The 32 that we shall use tonight are its progeny. They are all entirely black, with the exception of a star upon the forehead. That is perfectly admirable. But what do you do, Count, with all these horses? You see, I travel with them. But you are not always traveling. When I no longer require them, Bertuccio will sell them, and he expects to realize 30 or 40,000 francs by the sale. But no monarch in Europe will be wealthy enough to purchase them. Then he will sell them to some Eastern vizier, who will empty his coffers to purchase them, and refill them by applying the bastinado to his subjects. Count, may I suggest one idea to you? Certainly. It is that, next to you, Bertuccio must be the richest gentleman in Europe. You are mistaken, Viscount. I believe he has not a franc in his possession. Then he must be a wonder. My dear Count, if you tell me many more marvelous things, I warn you I shall not believe them. I countenance nothing that is marvelous. Albert, tell me, why does a steward rob his master? Because, I suppose, it is his nature to do so, for the love of robbing. You are mistaken. It is because he has a wife and family, and ambitious desires for himself and them. Also because he is not sure of always retaining his situation, and wishes to provide for the future. Now, Bertuccio is alone in the world. He uses my property without accounting for the use he makes of it. He is sure never to leave my service. Why? Because I should never get a better. Probabilities are deceptive, but I deal in certainties. He is the best servant over whom one has the power of life and death. Do you possess that right over Bertuccio? Yes. There are words which close a conversation with an iron door. Such was the Count's yes. The whole journey was performed with equal rapidity. The 32 horses, dispersed over 7 stages, brought them to their destination in 8 hours. At midnight they arrived at the gate of a beautiful park. The porter was in attendance. He had been apprised by the groom of the last stage of the Count's approach. At 2:30 in the morning Morcerf was conducted to his apartments, where a bath and supper were prepared. The servant who had traveled at the back of the carriage waited on him. Baptistin, who rode in front, attended the Count. Albert bathed, took his supper, and went to bed. All night he was lulled by the melancholy noise of the surf. On rising, he went to his window, which opened on a terrace, having the sea in front, and at the back a pretty park bounded by a small forest. In a creek lay a little sloop, with a narrow keel and high masts, bearing on its flag the Monte Cristo arms, which were a mountain or on a sea azure, with a cross gules in chief, which might be an allusion to his name that recalled Calvary, the mount rendered by our Lord's passion more precious than gold, and to the degrading cross which his blood had rendered holy. Or it might be some personal remembrance of suffering and regeneration buried in the night of this mysterious personage's past life. Around the schooner lay a number of small fishing boats belonging to the fishermen of the neighboring village, like humble subjects awaiting orders from their queen. There, as in every spot where Monte Cristo stopped, if but for 2 days, luxury abounded and life went on with the utmost ease. Albert found in his anteroom 2 guns, with all the accoutrements for hunting, a lofty room on the ground floor containing all the ingenious instruments the English, eminent in piscatory pursuits, since they are patient and sluggish, have invented for fishing. The day passed in pursuing those exercises in which Monte Cristo excelled. They killed 12 pheasants in the park, as many trout in the stream, dined in a summer house overlooking the ocean, and took tea in the library. Towards the evening of the 3rd day, Albert, completely exhausted with the exercise which invigorated Monte Cristo, was sleeping in an armchair near the window, while the Count was designing with his architect the plan of a conservatory in his house, when the sound of a horse at full speed on the high road made Albert look up. He was disagreeably surprised to see his own valet de chambre, whom he had not brought, that he might not inconvenience Monte Cristo. 40188 Florentine here, cried he, starting up. Is my mother ill? And he hastened to the door. Monte Cristo watched and saw him approach the valet, who drew a small sealed parcel from his pocket, containing a newspaper and a letter. From whom is this? Said he eagerly. From M. Beauchamp, replied Florentine. Did he send you? Yes, sir. He sent for me to his house, gave me money for my journey, procured a horse, and made me promise not to stop till I had reached you. I have come in 15 hours. Albert opened the letter with fear, uttered a shriek on reading the first line, and seized the paper. His sight was dimmed, his legs sank under him, and he would have fallen had not Florentine supported him. "Poor young man," said Monte Cristo in a low voice. "It is then true that the sin of the father shall fall on the children to the third and fourth generation." Meanwhile Albert had revived, and, continuing to read, he threw back his head, saying, "Florentine, is your horse fit to return immediately? It is a poor, lame post-horse. In what state was the house when you left?" "All was quiet, but on returning from M. Beauchamp's I found Madame in tears. She had sent for me to know when you would return. I told her my orders from M. Beauchamp. She first extended her arms to prevent me, but after a moment's reflection, 'Yes, go, Florentine,' said she, 'and may he come quickly.' 'Yes, my mother,' said Albert. 'I will return, and woe to the infamous wretch. But first of all I must get there.' He went back to the room where he had left Monte Cristo. 5 minutes had sufficed to make a complete transformation in his appearance. His voice had become rough and hoarse. His face was furrowed with wrinkles. His eyes burned under the blue-veined lids, and he tottered like a drunken man. 'Count,' said he, 'I thank you for your hospitality, which I would gladly have enjoyed longer, but I must return to Paris. What has happened? A great misfortune, more important to me than life. Don't question me, I beg of you, but lend me a horse. My stables are at your command, Viscount, but you will kill yourself by riding on horseback. Take a post-chaise or a carriage.' 'No, it would delay me, and I need the fatigue you warn me of. It will do me good.' Albert reeled as if he had been shot, and fell on a chair near the door. Monte Cristo did not see this second manifestation of physical exhaustion. He was at the window, calling, 'Ali, a horse for M. de Morcerf, quick! He is in a hurry. 40190 M. These words restored Albert. He darted from the room, followed by the Count. "Thank you," cried he, throwing himself on his horse. "Return as soon as you can, Florentine. Must I use any password to procure a horse? Only dismount. Another will be immediately saddled." Albert hesitated a moment. "You may think my departure strange and foolish," said the young man. "You do not know how a paragraph in a newspaper may exasperate one. Read that," said he, "when I am gone, that you may not be witness of my anger." While the Count picked up the paper he put spurs to his horse, which leaped in astonishment at such an unusual stimulus, and shot away with the rapidity of an arrow. The Count watched him with a feeling of compassion, and when he had completely disappeared, read as follows. The French officer in the service of Ali Pasha of Yanina alluded to 3 weeks since in El Impartial, who not only surrendered the castle of Yanina, but sold his benefactor to the Turks, styled himself truly at that time Fernand, as our esteemed contemporary states. But he has since added to his Christian name a title of nobility and a family name. He now calls himself the Count of Morcerf, and ranks among the peers. Thus the terrible secret, which Beauchamp had so generously destroyed, appeared again like an armed phantom, and another paper, deriving its information from some malicious source, had published 2 days after Albert's departure for Normandy the few lines which had rendered the unfortunate young man almost crazy. Chapter 86. The Trial. At 8 o'clock in the morning Albert had arrived at Beauchamp's door. The valet de chambre had received orders to usher him in at once. Beauchamp was in his bath. "Here I am," Albert said. "Well, my poor friend," replied Beauchamp, "I expected you. I need not say I think you are too faithful and too kind to have spoken of that painful circumstance. Your having sent for me is another proof of your affection. So, without losing time, tell me, have you the slightest idea whence this terrible blow proceeds? I think I have some clue. But first tell me all the particulars of this shameful plot." Beauchamp proceeded to relate to the young man, who was overwhelmed with shame and grief, the following facts. 2 days previously, the article had appeared in another paper besides El Impartial, and, what was more serious, one that was well known as a government paper. Beauchamp was breakfasting when he read the paragraph. He sent immediately for a cabriolet, and hastened to the publisher's office. Although professing diametrically opposite principles from those of the editor of the other paper, Beecham, as it sometimes, we may say often, happens, was his intimate friend. The editor was reading, with apparent delight, a leading article in the same paper on beet sugar, probably a composition of his own. "Ah, pardieu," said Beecham. "With the paper in your hand, my friend, I need not tell you the cause of my visit." "Are you interested in the sugar question?" asked the editor of the ministerial paper. "No," replied Beecham. "I have not considered the question. A totally different subject interests me." "What is it?" "The article relative to Morcerf." "Indeed? Is it not a curious affair?" "So curious that I think you are running a great risk of a prosecution for defamation of character." "Not at all. We have received with the information all the requisite proofs, and we are quite sure M. de Morcerf will not raise his voice against us. Besides, it is rendering a service to one's country to denounce these wretched criminals who are unworthy of the honor bestowed on them." Beecham was thunderstruck. "Who, then, has so correctly informed you?" asked he. "For my paper, which gave the first information on the subject, has been obliged to stop for want of proof, and yet we are more interested than you in exposing M. de Morcerf, as he is a peer of France, and we are of the opposition." "Oh, that is very simple. We have not sought to scandalize. This news was brought to us. A man arrived yesterday from Yanina, bringing a formidable array of documents, and when we hesitated to publish the accusatory article, he told us it should be inserted in some other paper." Beecham understood that nothing remained but to submit, and left the office to dispatch a courier to Morcerf. But he had been unable to send to Albert the following particulars, as the events had transpired after the messenger's departure. Namely, that the same day a great agitation was manifest in the House of Peers among the usually calm members of that dignified assembly. Everyone had arrived almost before the usual hour, and was conversing on the melancholy event which was to attract the attention of the public towards one of their most illustrious colleagues. Some were perusing the article, others making comments and recalling circumstances which substantiated the charges still more. The Count of Morcerf was no favorite with his colleagues. Like all upstarts, he had had recourse to a great deal of haughtiness to maintain his position. The true nobility laughed at him, the talented repelled him, and the honorable instinctively despised him. He was, in fact, in the unhappy position of the victim marked for sacrifice. The finger of God once pointed at him, everyone was prepared to raise the hue and cry. The Count of Morcerf alone was ignorant of the news. He did not take in the paper containing the defamatory article, and had passed the morning in writing letters and in trying a horse. He arrived at his usual hour with a proud look and insolent demeanor. He alighted, passed through the corridors, and entered the house without observing the hesitation of the doorkeepers or the coolness of his colleagues. 40194 M. Business had already been going on for half an hour when he entered. Everyone held the accusing paper, but, as usual, no one liked to take upon himself the responsibility of the attack. At length an honorable peer, Morcerf's acknowledged enemy, ascended the tribune with that solemnity which announced that the expected moment had arrived. There was an impressive silence. Morcerf alone knew not why such profound attention was given to an orator who was not always listened to with so much complacency. The Count did not notice the introduction, in which the speaker announced that his communication would be of that vital importance that it demanded the undivided attention of the House. But at the mention of Yanina and Colonel Fernand, he turned so frightfully pale that every member shuddered and fixed his eyes upon him. Moral wounds have this peculiarity. They may be hidden, but they never close. Always painful, always ready to bleed when touched, they remain fresh and open in the heart. The article having been read during the painful hush that followed, a universal shudder pervaded the assembly, and immediately the closest attention was given to the orator as he resumed his remarks. He stated his scruples and the difficulties of the case. It was the honor of M. de Morcerf and that of the whole House he proposed to defend, by provoking a debate on personal questions, which are always such painful themes of discussion. He concluded by calling for an investigation, which might dispose of the calumnious report before it had time to spread, and restore M. de Morcerf to the position he had long held in public opinion. Morcerf was so completely overwhelmed by this great and unexpected calamity that he could scarcely stammer a few words as he looked around on the assembly. This timidity, which might proceed from the astonishment of innocence as well as the shame of guilt, conciliated some in his favor. For men who are truly generous are always ready to compassionate when the misfortune of their enemy surpasses the limits of their hatred. The president put it to the vote, and it was decided that the investigation should take place. The count was asked what time he required to prepare his defense. Morcerf's courage had revived when he found himself alive after this horrible blow. "My lords," answered he, "it is not by time I could repel the attack made on me by enemies unknown to me, and, doubtless, hidden in obscurity. It is immediately, and by a thunderbolt, that I must repel the flash of lightning which, for a moment, startled me. Oh, that I could, instead of taking up this defense, shed my last drop of blood to prove to my noble colleagues that I am their equal in worth." These words made a favorable impression on behalf of the accused. "I demand, then, that the examination shall take place as soon as possible, and I will furnish the House with all necessary information." "What day do you fix?" asked the president. "Today I am at your service," replied the count. The president rang the bell. "Does the House approve that the examination should take place today?" 40196 "Yes," was the unanimous answer. A committee of 12 members was chosen to examine the proofs brought forward by Morcerf. The investigation would begin at 8 o'clock that evening in the committee room, and if postponement were necessary, the proceedings would be resumed each evening at the same hour. Morcerf asked leave to retire. He had to collect the documents he had long been preparing against this storm, which his sagacity had foreseen. Beauchamp related to the young man all the facts we have just narrated. His story, however, had over ours all the advantage of the animation of living things over the coldness of dead things. Albert listened, trembling now with hope, then with anger, and then again with shame, for from Beauchamp's confidence he knew his father was guilty, and he asked himself how, since he was guilty, he could prove his innocence. Beauchamp hesitated to continue his narrative. "What next?" asked Albert. "What next? My friend, you impose a painful task on me. Must you know all?" "Absolutely, and rather from your lips than another's." "Muster up all your courage, then, for never have you required it more." Albert passed his hand over his forehead, as if to try his strength, as a man who is preparing to defend his life proves his shield and bends his sword. He thought himself strong enough, for he mistook fever for energy. "Go on," said he. The evening arrived. All Paris was in expectation. Many said your father had only to show himself to crush the charge against him. Many others said he would not appear, while some asserted that they had seen him start for Brussels, and others went to the police office to inquire if he had taken out a passport. I used all my influence with one of the committee, a young peer of my acquaintance, to get admission to one of the galleries. He called for me at 7 o'clock, and, before anyone had arrived, asked one of the doorkeepers to place me in a box. I was concealed by a column, and might witness the whole of the terrible scene which was about to take place. At 8 o'clock all were in their places, and M. de Morcerf entered at the last stroke. He held some papers in his hand. His countenance was calm and his step firm, and he was dressed with great care in his military uniform, which was buttoned completely up to the chin. His presence produced a good effect. The committee was made up of liberals, several of whom came forward to shake hands with him. Albert felt his heart bursting at these particulars, but gratitude mingled with his sorrow. He would gladly have embraced those who had given his father this proof of esteem at a moment when his honor was so powerfully attacked. At this moment one of the doorkeepers brought in a letter for the president. "You are at liberty to speak, M. de Morcerf," said the president as he unsealed the letter, and the count began his defense, I assure you, Albert, in a most eloquent and skillful manner. He produced documents proving that the vizier of Yanina had up to the last moment honored him with his entire confidence, since he had interested him with a negotiation of life and death with the emperor. He produced the ring, his mark of authority, with which Ali Pasha generally sealed his letters, and which the latter had given him, that he might, on his return at any hour of the day or night, gain access to the presence, even in the harem. Unfortunately, the negotiation failed, and when he returned to defend his benefactor, he was dead. But, said the Count, so great was Ali Pasha's confidence, that on his deathbed he resigned his favorite mistress and her daughter to my care. Albert started on hearing these words. The history of Haiti recurred to him, and he remembered what she had said of that message and the ring, and the manner in which she had been sold and made a slave. And what effect did this discourse produce? Anxiously inquired Albert. I acknowledge it affected me, and, indeed, all the committee also, said Beauchamp. Meanwhile, the president carelessly opened the letter which had been brought to him, but the first lines aroused his attention. He read them again, and fixing his eyes on him, De Morcerf, Count, said he, you have said that the vizier of Yanina confided his wife and daughter to your care? Yes, sir, replied Morcerf. But in that, like all the rest, misfortune pursued me. On my return, Vasiliki and her daughter Haiti had disappeared. Did you know them? My intimacy with the Pasha and his unlimited confidence had gained me an introduction to them, and I had seen them above 20 times. Have you any idea what became of them? Yes, sir. I heard they had fallen victims to their sorrow, and, perhaps, to their poverty. I was not rich. My life was in constant danger. I could not seek them, to my great regret. The president frowned imperceptibly. Gentlemen, said he, you have heard the Comte de Morcerf's defense. Can you, sir, produce any witnesses to the truth of what you have asserted? Alas, no, monsieur, replied the Count. All those who surrounded the vizier or who knew me at his court are either dead or gone away, I know not where. I believe that I alone, of all my countrymen, survived that dreadful war. I have only the letters of Ali Tepelini, which I have placed before you, the ring, a token of his goodwill, which is here, and lastly, the most convincing proof I can offer, after an anonymous attack, and that is the absence of any witness against my veracity and the purity of my military life. A murmur of approbation ran through the assembly, and at this moment Albert, had nothing more transpired, your father's cause had been gained. It only remained to put it to the vote, when the president resumed, Gentlemen, and you, monsieur, you will not be displeased, I presume, to listen to one who calls himself a very important witness, and who has just presented himself. He is, doubtless, come to prove the perfect innocence of our colleague. Here is a letter I have just received on the subject. Shall it be read, or shall it be passed over? And shall we take no notice of this incident? M. De Morcerf turned pale, and clenched his hands on the papers he held. The committee decided to hear the letter. The Count was thoughtful and silent. The president read, Mr. President, I can furnish the Committee of Inquiry into the conduct of the Lieutenant General the Count of Morcerf in Epirus and in Macedonia with important particulars. The president paused, and the Count turned pale. The president looked at his auditors. Proceed, was heard on all sides. The president resumed, I was on the spot at the death of Ali Pasha. I was present during his last moments. I know what is become of Vasiliki and Haiti. I am at the command of the committee, and even claim the honor of being heard. I shall be in the lobby when this note is delivered to you. And who is this witness, or rather this enemy? Asked the Count, in a tone in which there was a visible alteration. We shall know, sir, replied the president. Is the committee willing to hear this witness? Yes, yes, they all said at once. The doorkeeper was called. Is there anyone in the lobby? Said the president. Yes, sir. Who is it? A woman, accompanied by a servant. Everyone looked at his neighbor. Bring her in, said the president. 5 minutes after the doorkeeper again appeared. All eyes were fixed on the door, and I, said Beauchamp, shared the general expectation and anxiety. Behind the doorkeeper walked a woman enveloped in a large veil, which completely concealed her. It was evident, from her figure and the perfumes she had about her, that she was young and fastidious in her tastes, but that was all. The president requested her to throw aside her veil, and it was then seen that she was dressed in the Grecian costume, and was remarkably beautiful. Ah, said Albert, it was she. Who? Haiti. Who told you that? Alas, I guess it. But go on, Beauchamp. You see I am calm and strong. And yet we must be drawing near the disclosure. M. De Morcerf, continued Beecham, looked at this woman with surprise and terror. Her lips were about to pass his sentence of life or death. To the committee the adventure was so extraordinary and curious that the interest they had felt for the Count's safety became now quite a secondary matter. The president himself advanced to place a seat for the young lady, but she declined availing herself of it. As for the Count, he had fallen on his chair. It was evident that his legs refused to support him. "Madame," said the president, "you have engaged to furnish the committee with some important particulars respecting the affair at Yanina, and you have stated that you were an eyewitness of the event." "I was, indeed," said the stranger, with a tone of sweet melancholy, and with the sonorous voice peculiar to the East. "But allow me to say that you must have been very young then. I was 4 years old, but as those events deeply concerned me, not a single detail has escaped my memory." "In what manner could these events concern you? And who are you, that they should have made so deep an impression on you?" "On them depended my father's life," replied she. "I am Haiti, the daughter of Ali Tepelini, Pasha of Yanina, and of Vasiliki, his beloved wife." 40202M. The blush of mingled pride and modesty which suddenly suffused the cheeks of the young woman, the brilliancy of her eye, and her highly important communication, produced an indescribable effect on the assembly. As for the Count, he could not have been more overwhelmed if a thunderbolt had fallen at his feet and opened an immense gulf before him. "Madam," replied the president, bowing with profound respect, "allow me to ask one question. It shall be the last. Can you prove the authenticity of what you have now stated?" "I can, sir," said Haiti, drawing from under her veil a satin satchel highly perfumed. "For here is the register of my birth, signed by my father and his principal officers, and that of my baptism, my father having consented to my being brought up in my mother's faith. This latter has been sealed by the Grand Primate of Macedonia and Epirus. And lastly, and perhaps the most important, the record of the sale of my person and that of my mother to the Armenian merchant El Kabir, by the French officer who, in his infamous bargain with the Porte, had reserved as his part of the booty the wife and daughter of his benefactor, whom he sold for the sum of 400,000 francs. A greenish pallor spread over the Count's cheeks, and his eyes became bloodshot at these terrible imputations, which were listened to by the assembly with ominous silence. Haiti, still calm, but with a calmness more dreadful than the anger of another would have been, handed to the president the record of her sale, written in Arabic. It had been supposed some of the papers might be in the Arabian, Romaic, or Turkish language, and the interpreter of the house was in attendance. One of the noble peers, who was familiar with the Arabic language, having studied it during the famous Egyptian campaign, followed with his eye as the translator read aloud. "I, El Kabir, a slave merchant and purveyor of the harem of His Highness, acknowledge having received for transmission to the Sublime Emperor, from the French lord, the Count of Monte Cristo, an emerald valued at 800,000 francs, as the ransom of a young Christian slave of 11 years of age, named Haiti, the acknowledged daughter of the late Lord Ali Tepelini, Pasha of Yanina, and of Vasiliki, his favorite, she having been sold to me 7 years previously with her mother, who had died on arriving at Constantinople, by a French colonel in the service of the Vizier Ali Tepelini, named Fernand Mondego. The above-mentioned purchase was made on His Highness's account, whose mandate I had, for the sum of 400,000 francs. Given at Constantinople by authority of His Highness, in the year 1247 of the Hijra. Signed El Kabir. That this record should have all due authority, it shall bear the imperial seal, which the vendor is bound to have affixed to it. Near the merchant's signature there was, indeed, the seal of the Sublime Emperor. A dreadful silence followed the reading of this document. The Count could only stare, and his gaze, fixed as if unconsciously on Haiti, seemed one of fire and blood. "Madame," said the president, "may reference be made to the Count of Monte Cristo, who is now, I believe, in Paris?" "Sir," replied Haiti, "the Count of Monte Cristo, my foster father, has been in Normandy the last 3 days." "Who, then, has counseled you to take this step, one for which the court is deeply indebted to you, and which is perfectly natural, considering your birth and your misfortunes?" "Sir," replied Haiti, "I have been led to take this step from a feeling of respect and grief, Although a Christian, may God forgive me, I have always sought to revenge my illustrious father. Since I set my foot in France and knew the traitor lived in Paris, I have watched carefully. I live retired in the house of my noble protector, but I do it from choice. I love retirement and silence, because I can live with my thoughts and recollections of past days. But the Count of Monte Cristo surrounds me with every paternal care, and I am ignorant of nothing which passes in the world. I learn all in the silence of my apartments. For instance, I see all the newspapers, every periodical, as well as every new piece of music. And by thus watching the course of the life of others, I learned what had transpired this morning in the House of Peers, and what was to take place this evening. Then I wrote, 40204M. Then, remarked the President, the Count of Monte Cristo knows nothing of your present proceedings? He is quite unaware of them, and I have but one fear, which is that he should disapprove of what I have done. But it is a glorious day for me, continued the young girl, raising her ardent gaze to heaven, that on which I find at last an opportunity of avenging my father. The Count had not uttered one word the whole of this time. His colleagues looked at him, and doubtless pitied his prospects, blighted under the perfumed breath of a woman. His misery was depicted in sinister lines on his countenance. M. de Morcerf, said the President, do you recognize this lady as the daughter of Ali Tepelini, Pasha of Yanina? No, said Morcerf, attempting to rise. It is a base plot, contrived by my enemies. Haydée, whose eyes had been fixed on the door, as if expecting someone, turned hastily, and seeing the Count standing, shrieked, You do not know me? Said she. Well, I fortunately recognize you. You are Fernand Mondego, the French officer who led the troops of my noble father. It is you who surrendered the castle of Yanina. It is you who, sent by him to Constantinople, to treat with the emperor for the life or death of your benefactor, brought back a false mandate granting full pardon. It is you who, with that mandate, obtained the Pasha's ring, which gave you authority over Selim, the firekeeper. It is you who stabbed Selim. It is you who sold us, my mother and me, to the merchant El Kabir. Assassin, 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 you have still on your brow your master's blood. Look, gentlemen, all. These words had been pronounced with such enthusiasm and evident truth, that every eye was fixed on the Count's forehead, and he himself passed his hand across it, as if he felt Ali's blood still lingering there. You positively recognize M. de Morcerf as the officer, Fernand Mondego? Indeed I do, cried Haydée. Oh, my mother, it was you who said, you were free, you had a beloved father, you were destined to be almost a queen. Look well at that man. It is he who raised your father's head on the point of a spear. It is he who sold us. It is he who forsook us. Look well at his right hand, on which he has a large wound. If you forgot his features, you would know him by that hand, into which fell, one by one, the gold pieces of the merchant El Kabir. I know him. Ah, let him say now if he does not recognize me. Each word fell like a dagger on Morcerf, and deprived him of a portion of his energy. As she uttered the last, he hid his mutilated hand hastily in his bosom, and fell back on his seat, overwhelmed by wretchedness and despair. This scene completely changed the opinion of the assembly respecting the accused Count. Count of Morcerf, said the President, do not allow yourself to be cast down, answer. The justice of the court is supreme and impartial as that of God. It will not suffer you to be trampled on by your enemies without giving you an opportunity of defending yourself. Shall further inquiries be made? Shall 2 members of the House be sent to Yanina? Speak. Morcerf did not reply. Then all the members looked at each other with terror. They knew the Count's energetic and violent temper. It must be, indeed, a dreadful blow which would deprive him of courage to defend himself. They expected that his stupefied silence would be followed by a fiery outburst. Well, asked the President, what is your decision? 40206M. I have no reply to make, said the Count in a low tone. Has the daughter of Ali Tepelini spoken the truth? Said the President. Is she, then, the terrible witness to whose charge you dare not plead not guilty? Have you really committed the crimes of which you are accused? The Count looked around him with an expression which might have softened tigers, but which could not disarm his judges. Then he raised his eyes towards the ceiling, but withdrew then, immediately, as if he feared the roof would open and reveal to his distressed view that second tribunal called heaven, and that other judge named God. Then, with a hasty movement, he tore open his coat, which seemed to stifle him, and flew from the room like a madman. His footstep was heard one moment in the corridor, then the rattling of his carriage wheels as he was driven rapidly away. "Gentlemen," said the president when silence was restored, "is the Count of Morcerf convicted of felony, treason, and conduct unbecoming a member of this house?" "Yes," replied all the members of the Committee of Inquiry with a unanimous voice. Haydée had remained until the close of the meeting. She heard the Count's sentence pronounced without betraying an expression of joy or pity. Then, drawing her veil over her face, she bowed majestically to the councillors, and left with that dignified step which Virgil attributes to his goddesses. Chapter 87. The Challenge. "Then," continued Beauchamp, "I took advantage of the silence and the darkness to leave the house without being seen. The usher who had introduced me was waiting for me at the door, and he conducted me through the corridors to a private entrance opening into the Rue de Vaugirard. I left with mingled feelings of sorrow and delight. Excuse me, Albert. Sorrow on your account, and delight with that noble girl, thus pursuing paternal vengeance. Yes, Albert, from whatever source the blow may have proceeded, it may be from an enemy, but that enemy is only the agent of Providence." Albert held his head between his hands. He raised his face, red with shame and bathed in tears, and seizing Beauchamp's arm, "My friend," said he, "my life is ended. I cannot calmly say with you, Providence has struck the blow. But I must discover who pursues me with this hatred, and when I have found him I shall kill him or he will kill me. I rely on your friendship to assist me, Beauchamp, if contempt has not banished it from your heart." "Contempt, my friend? How does this misfortune affect you?" "No, happily that unjust prejudice is forgotten which made the son responsible for the father's actions. Review your life, Albert. Although it is only just beginning, did a lovely summer's day ever dawn with greater purity than has marked the commencement of your career? No, Albert, take my advice. You are young and rich, leave Paris. All is soon forgotten in this great Babylon of excitement and changing tastes. You will return after 3 or 4 years with a Russian princess for a bride, and no one will think more of what occurred yesterday than if it had happened 16 years ago. Thank you, my dear Beauchamp. Thank you for the excellent feeling which prompts your advice. But it cannot be. I have told you my wish, or rather my determination. You understand that, interested as I am in this affair, I cannot see it in the same light as you do. What appears to you to emanate from a celestial source seems to me to proceed from one far less pure. Providence appears to me to have no share in this affair, and happily so, for instead of the invisible, impalpable agent of celestial rewards and punishments, I shall find one both palpable and visible, on whom I shall revenge myself, I assure you, for all I have suffered during the last month. Now, I repeat, Beauchamp, I wish to return to human and material existence, and if you are still the friend you profess to be, help me to discover the hand that struck the blow." "Be it so," said Beauchamp. "If you must have me descend to earth, I submit, and if you will seek your enemy, I will assist you, and I will engage to find him, my honor being almost as deeply interested as yours." "Well, then, you understand, Beauchamp, that we begin our search immediately. Each moment's delay is an eternity for me. The calumniator is not yet punished, and he may hope that he will not be. But, on my honor, if he thinks so, he deceives himself. Well, listen, Morcerf. Ah, Beauchamp, I see you know something already. You will restore me to life. I do not say there is any truth in what I am going to tell you, but it is, at least, a ray of light in a dark night. By following it we may, perhaps, discover something more certain. Tell me. Satisfy my impatience. Well, I will tell you what I did not like to mention on my return from Yanina. Say on. I went, of course, to the chief banker of the town to make inquiries. At the first word, before I had even mentioned your father's name, "Ah," said he, I guess what brings you here. How and why? Because a fortnight since I was questioned on the same subject. By whom? By a banker of Paris, my correspondent, whose name is Danglars. He, cried Albert. Yes, it is indeed he who has so long pursued my father with jealous hatred. He, the man who would be popular, cannot forgive the Count of Morcerf for being created a peer, and this marriage broken off without a reason being assigned. Yes, it is all from the same cause. Make inquiries, Albert, but do not be angry without reason. Make inquiries, and if it be true. Oh, yes, if it be true, cried the young man. He shall pay me all I have suffered. Beware, Morcerf, he is already an old man. I will respect his age as he has respected the honor of my family. If my father had offended him, why did he not attack him personally? Oh no, he was afraid to encounter him face to face. I do not condemn you, Albert. I only restrain you. Act prudently. Oh, do not fear. Besides, you will accompany me. Beauchamp, solemn transactions should be sanctioned by a witness. Before this day closes, if M. Danglars is guilty, he shall cease to live or I shall die. Pardieu, Beauchamp. Mine shall be a splendid funeral. When such resolutions are made, Albert, they should be promptly executed. Do you wish to go to M. Danglars? Let us go immediately. They sent for a cabriolet. On entering the banker's mansion, they perceived the phaeton and servant of M. Andrea Cavalcanti. Ah, parbleu, that's good, said Albert with a gloomy tone. If M. Danglars will not fight with me, I will kill his son-in-law. Cavalcanti will certainly fight. The servant announced the young man. But the banker, recollecting what had transpired the day before, did not wish him admitted. It was, however, too late. Albert had followed the footman, and, hearing the order given, forced the door open, and followed by Beauchamp found himself in the banker's study. "Sir," cried the latter, "am I no longer at liberty to receive whom I choose in my house? You appear to forget yourself sadly." "No, sir," said Albert coldly. "There are circumstances in which one cannot, except through cowardice. I offer you that refuge. Refuse to admit certain persons at least. What is your errand, then, with me, sir?" "I mean," said Albert, drawing near, and without apparently noticing Cavalcanti, who stood with his back towards the fireplace, "I mean to propose a meeting in some retired corner where no one will interrupt us for 10 minutes. That will be sufficient. Where two men having met, one of them will remain on the ground." Danglars turned pale. Cavalcanti moved a step forward, and Albert turned towards him. "And you too," said he. "Come if you like, monsieur. You have a claim, being almost one of the family, and I will give as many rendezvous of that kind as I can find persons willing to accept them." Cavalcanti looked at Danglars with a stupefied air, and the latter, making an effort, arose and stepped between the two young men. Albert's attack on Andrea had placed him on a different footing, and he hoped this visit had another cause than that he had at first supposed. "Indeed, sir," said he to Albert, "if you are come to quarrel with this gentleman because I have preferred him to you, I shall resign the case to the king's attorney." "You mistake, sir," said Morcerf with a gloomy smile. "I am not referring in the least to matrimony, and I only addressed myself to M. Cavalcanti because he appeared disposed to interfere between us. In one respect you are right, for I am ready to quarrel with everyone today. But you have the first claim, M. Danglars. 40212 M. "Sir," replied Danglars, pale with anger and fear, "I warn you, when I have the misfortune to meet with a mad dog, I kill it, and far from thinking myself guilty of a crime, I believe I do society a kindness. Now, if you are mad and try to bite me, I will kill you without pity. Is it my fault that your father has dishonored himself?" "Yes, miserable wretch," cried Morcerf. "It is your fault." Danglars retreated a few steps. "My fault?" said he. "You must be mad. What do I know of the Grecian affair? Have I traveled in that country? Did I advise your father to sell the castle of Yanina? To betray—" "Silence," said Albert with a thundering voice. "No, it is not you who have directly made this exposure and brought this sorrow on us, but you hypocritically provoked it." "I?" "Yes, you. How came it known?" I suppose you read it in the paper in the account from Yanina? Who wrote to Yanina? To Yanina? Yes. Who wrote for particulars concerning my father? I imagine anyone may write to Yanina. But one person only wrote. One only. Yes. And that was you. I doubtless wrote. It appears to me that when about to marry your daughter to a young man, it is right to make some inquiries respecting his family. It is not only a right, but a duty. You wrote, sir, knowing what answer you would receive. I indeed? I assure you, cried Danglars, with a confidence and security proceeding less from fear than from the interest he really felt for the young man. I solemnly declare to you that I should never have thought of writing to Yanina, did I know anything of Ali Pasha's misfortunes. Who then urged you to write? Tell me. Pardieu, it was the most simple thing in the world. I was speaking of your father's past history. I said the origin of his fortune remained obscure. The person to whom I addressed my scruples asked me where your father had acquired his property. I answered, in Greece. Then, said he, write to Yanina. And who thus advised you? No other than your friend, Monte Cristo. The Count of Monte Cristo told you to write to Yanina? Yes, and I wrote, and will show you my correspondence, if you like. Albert and Beauchamp looked at each other. Sir, said Beauchamp, who had not yet spoken, you appear to accuse the Count, who is absent from Paris at this moment, and cannot justify himself. I accuse no one, sir, said Danglars. I relate, and I will repeat before the Count what I have said to you. Does the Count know what answer you received? Yes. I showed it to him. Did he know my father's Christian name was Fernand, and his family name Mondego? Yes, I had told him that long since, and I did only what any other would have done in my circumstances, and perhaps less. When, the day after the arrival of this answer, your father came by the advice of Monte Cristo to ask my daughter's hand for you, I decidedly refused him, but without any explanation or exposure. In short, why should I have any more to do with the affair? How did the honor or disgrace of M. de Morcerf affect me? It neither increased nor decreased my income. Albert felt the blood mounting to his brow. There was no doubt upon the subject. Danglars defended himself with the baseness, but at the same time with the assurance of a man who speaks the truth at least in part, if not wholly, not for conscience' sake, but through fear. Besides, what was Morcerf seeking? It was not whether Danglars or Monte Cristo was more or less guilty. It was a man who would answer for the offense, whether trifling or serious. It was a man who would fight, and it was evident Danglars would not fight. In addition to this, everything forgotten or unperceived before presented itself now to his recollection. Monte Cristo knew everything, as he had bought the daughter of Ali Pasha. And, knowing everything, he had advised Danglars to write to Yanina. The answer known, he had yielded to Albert's wish to be introduced to Haydée, and allowed the conversation to turn on the death of Ali, and had not opposed Haydée's recital, but having, doubtless, warned the young girl, in the few Romaic words he spoke to her, not to implicate Morcerf's father. Besides, had he not begged of Morcerf not to mention his father's name before Haydée? Lastly, he had taken Albert to Normandy when he knew the final blow was near. There could be no doubt that all had been calculated and previously arranged. Monte Cristo then was in league with his father's enemies. Albert took Beauchamp aside, and communicated these ideas to him. You are right, said the latter. M. Danglars has only been a secondary agent in this sad affair, and it is of M. de Monte Cristo that you must demand an explanation. Albert turned. Sir, said he to Danglars, understand that I do not take a final leave of you. I must ascertain if your insinuations are just, and am going now to inquire of the Count of Monte Cristo. He bowed to the banker, and went out with Beauchamp, without appearing to notice Cavalcanti. Danglars accompanied him to the door, where he again assured Albert that no motive of personal hatred had influenced him against the Count of Morcerf. Chapter 88. The Insult. At the banker's door Beauchamp stopped Morcerf. Listen, said he. Just now I told you it was of M. de Monte Cristo you must demand an explanation. Yes, and we are going to his house. Reflect, Morcerf. One moment before you go. On what shall I reflect? On the importance of the step you are taking. Is it more serious than going to M. Danglars? Yes, M. Danglars is a money lover, and those who love money, think too much of what they risk to be easily induced to fight a duel. The other is, on the contrary, to all appearance a true nobleman. But do you not fear to find him a bully? I only fear one thing, namely, to find a man who will not fight. Do not be alarmed, said Beauchamp. He will meet you. My only fear is that he will be too strong for you. My friend, said Morcerf with a sweet smile, that is what I wish. The happiest thing that could occur to me would be to die in my father's stead. That would save us all. Your mother would die of grief. My poor mother, said Albert, passing his hand across his eyes. I know she would, but better so than die of shame. Are you quite decided, Albert? Yes. Let us go. But do you think we shall find the Count at home? He intended returning some hours after me, and doubtless he is now at home. They ordered the driver to take them to number 30 Champs-Élysées. Beauchamp wished to go in alone, but Albert observed that as this was an unusual circumstance, he might be allowed to deviate from the usual etiquette of duels. The cause which the young man espoused was one so sacred that Beauchamp had only to comply with all his wishes. He yielded and contented himself with following Morcerf. Albert sprang from the porter's lodge to the steps. He was received by Baptistin. The Count had, indeed, just arrived, but he was in his bath, and had forbidden that anyone should be admitted. But after his bath? Asked Morcerf. My master will go to dinner. And after dinner? He will sleep an hour. Then? He is going to the opera. Are you sure of it? Asked Albert. Quite, sir. My master has ordered his horses at 8 o'clock precisely. Very good, replied Albert. That is all I wish to know. Then, turning towards Beauchamp, if you have anything to attend to, Beauchamp, do it directly. If you have any appointment for this evening, defer it till tomorrow. I depend on you to accompany me to the opera, and if you can, bring Châteaurenaud with you. Beauchamp availed himself of Albert's permission, and left him, promising to call for him at 8:15. On his return home, Albert expressed his wish to Franz Debray and Morrel to see them at the opera that evening. Then he went to see his mother, who since the events of the day before had refused to see anyone, and had kept her room. He found her in bed, overwhelmed with grief at this public humiliation. The sight of Albert produced the effect which might naturally be expected on Mercédès. She pressed her son's hand and sobbed aloud, but her tears relieved her. Albert stood one moment speechless by the side of his mother's bed. It was evident from his pale face and knit brows that his resolution to revenge himself was growing weaker. "My dear mother," said he, "do you know if M. de Morcerf has any enemy?" Mercédès started. She noticed that the young man did not say, "My father." "My son," she said. "Persons in the Count's situation have many secret enemies. Those who are known are not the most dangerous. I know it, and appeal to your penetration. You are of so superior a mind, nothing escapes you." "Why do you say so?" "Because, for instance, you noticed on the evening of the ball we gave, that M. de Monte Cristo would eat nothing in our house." Mercédès raised herself on her feverish arm. "M. de Monte Cristo," she exclaimed. "And how is he connected with the question you asked me?" 40219 M. You know, Mother, M. de Monte Cristo is almost an Oriental, and it is customary with the Orientals to secure full liberty for revenge by not eating or drinking in the houses of their enemies. "Do you say M. de Monte Cristo is our enemy?" replied Mercédès, becoming paler than the sheet which covered her. "Who told you so?" "Why, you are mad, Albert. M. de Monte Cristo has only shown us kindness. M. de Monte Cristo saved your life. You yourself presented him to us. Oh, I entreat you, my son, if you had entertained such an idea, dispel it, and my counsel to you, nay, my prayer, is to retain his friendship." "Mother," replied the young man, "you have special reasons for telling me to conciliate that man." "I?" said Mercédès, blushing as rapidly as she had turned pale, and again becoming paler than ever. "Yes, doubtless. And is it not that he may never do us any harm? Mercedes shuddered, and, fixing on her son a scrutinizing gaze, "You speak strangely," said she to Albert, "and you appear to have some singular prejudices. What has the Count done? 3 days since you were with him in Normandy. Only 3 days since we looked on him as our best friend." An ironical smile passed over Albert's lips. Mercedes saw it, and with the double instinct of woman and mother guessed all. But as she was prudent and strong-minded, she concealed both her sorrows and her fears. Albert was silent. An instant after, the Countess resumed, "You came to inquire after my health. I will candidly acknowledge that I am not well. You should install yourself here, and cheer my solitude. I do not wish to be left alone." "Mother," said the young man, "you know how gladly I would obey your wish, but an urgent and important affair obliges me to leave you for the whole evening." "Well," replied Mercedes, sighing, "go, Albert. I will not make you a slave to your filial piety." Albert pretended he did not hear, bowed to his mother, and quitted her. Scarcely had he shut her door, when Mercedes called a confidential servant, and ordered him to follow Albert wherever he should go that evening, and to come and tell her immediately what he observed. Then she rang for her lady's maid, and, weak as she was, she dressed, in order to be ready for whatever might happen. The footman's mission was an easy one. Albert went to his room, and dressed with unusual care. At 8:10 Beecham arrived. He had seen Châteaurenaud, who had promised to be in the orchestra before the curtain was raised. Both got into Albert's coupe, and, as the young man had no reason to conceal where he was going, he called aloud, "To the opera." In his impatience he arrived before the beginning of the performance. 4:0221 m. Châteaurenaud was at his post. Apprised by Beecham of the circumstances, he required no explanation from Albert. The conduct of the son in seeking to avenge his father was so natural that Châteaurenaud did not seek to dissuade him, and was content with renewing his assurances of devotion. Debray was not yet come, but Albert knew that he seldom lost a scene at the opera. Albert wandered about the theatre until the curtain was drawn up. He hoped to meet with M. de Monte Cristo either in the lobby or on the stairs. The bell summoned him to his seat, and he entered the orchestra with Châteaurenaud and Beecham. But his eyes scarcely quitted the box between the columns, which remained obstinately closed during the whole of the first act. At last, as Albert was looking at his watch for about the 100th time, at the beginning of the second act the door opened, and Monte Cristo entered, dressed in black, and, leaning over the front of the box, looked around the pit. Morrel followed him, and looked also for his sister and brother-in-law. He soon discovered them in another box, and kissed his hand to them. The Count, in his survey of the pit, encountered a pale face and threatening eyes, which evidently sought to gain his attention. He recognized Albert, but thought it better not to notice him, as he looked so angry and discomposed. Without communicating his thoughts to his companion, he sat down, drew out his opera-glass, and looked another way. Although apparently not noticing Albert, he did not, however, lose sight of him, and when the curtain fell at the end of the second act, he saw him leave the orchestra with his two friends. Then his head was seen passing at the back of the boxes, and the Count knew that the approaching storm was intended to fall on him. He was at the moment conversing cheerfully with Morrel, but he was well prepared for what might happen. The door opened, and Monte Cristo, turning round, saw Albert, pale and trembling, followed by Beecham and Châteaurenaud. "Well," cried he, with that benevolent politeness which distinguished his salutation from the common civilities of the world, "my cavalier has attained his object. Good evening, M. de Morcerf." The countenance of this man, who possessed such extraordinary control over his feelings, expressed the most perfect cordiality. Morrel only then recollected the letter he had received from the Viscount, in which, without assigning any reason, he begged him to go to the opera, but he understood that something terrible was brooding. "We are not come here, sir, to exchange hypocritical expressions of politeness or false professions of friendship," said Albert, "but to demand an explanation." The young man's trembling voice was scarcely audible. "An explanation at the opera?" said the Count, with that calm tone and penetrating eye which characterize the man who knows his cause is good. Little acquainted as I am with the habits of Parisians, I should not have thought this the place for such a demand. Still, if people will shut themselves up, said Albert, and cannot be seen because they are bathing, dining, or asleep, we must avail ourselves of the opportunity whenever they are to be seen. I am not difficult of access, sir. For yesterday, if my memory does not deceive me, you were at my house. Yesterday I was at your house, sir, said the young man, because then I knew not who you were. In pronouncing these words Albert had raised his voice so as to be heard by those in the adjoining boxes and in the lobby. Thus the attention of many was attracted by this altercation. "Where you come from, sir?" said Monte Cristo. "You do not appear to be in the possession of your senses." "Provided I understand your perfidy, sir, and succeed in making you understand that I will be revenged, I shall be reasonable enough," said Albert furiously. "I do not understand you, sir," replied Monte Cristo. "And if I did, your tone is too high. I am at home here, and I alone have a right to raise my voice above another's. Leave the box, sir." Monte Cristo pointed towards the door with the most commanding dignity. "Ah, I shall know how to make you leave your home," replied Albert, clasping in his convulsed grasp the glove, which Monte Cristo did not lose sight of. "Well, well," said Monte Cristo quietly, "I see you wish to quarrel with me, but I would give you one piece of advice which you will do well to keep in mind. It is in poor taste to make a display of a challenge. Display is not becoming to everyone. M. de Morcerf." At this name a murmur of astonishment passed around the group of spectators of this scene. They had talked of no one but Morcerf the whole day. Albert understood the allusion in a moment, and was about to throw his glove at the Count, when Morrel seized his hand, while Beauchamp and Châteaurenaud, fearing the scene would surpass the limits of a challenge, held him back. But Monte Cristo, without rising, and leaning forward in his chair, merely stretched out his arm and, taking the damp, crushed glove from the clenched hand of the young man, "Sir," said he in a solemn tone, "I consider your glove thrown, and will return it to you wrapped around a bullet. Now leave me, or I will summon my servants to throw you out at the door." Wild, almost unconscious, and with eyes inflamed, Albert stepped back, and Morrel closed the door. Monte Cristo took up his glass again as if nothing had happened. His face was like marble, and his heart was like bronze. Morrel whispered, "What have you done to him?" "I? Nothing, at least personally," said Monte Cristo. "But there must be some cause for this strange scene. The Count of Morcerf's adventure exasperates the young man. Have you anything to do with it?" "It was through Haydée that the chamber was informed of his father's treason." "Indeed?" said Morrel. "I had been told, but would not credit it, that the Grecian slave I have seen with you here in this very box was the daughter of Ali Pasha." "It is true, nevertheless." "Then," said Morrel, "I understand it all, and this scene was premeditated." "How so?" "Yes, Albert wrote to request me to come to the opera, doubtless that I might be a witness to the insult he meant to offer you." "Probably," said Monte Cristo with his imperturbable tranquillity. "But what shall you do with him?" "With whom?" "With Albert." "What shall I do with Albert?" "As certainly, Maximilian, as I now press your hand, I shall kill him before 10 o'clock tomorrow morning." Morrel, in his turn, took Monte Cristo's hand in both of his, and he shuddered to feel how cold and steady it was. "Ah, Count," said he, "his father loves him so much." "Do not speak to me of that," said Monte Cristo, with the first movement of anger he had betrayed. "I will make him suffer." Morrel, amazed, let fall Monte Cristo's hand. Count," said he. "Dear Maximilian," interrupted the Count, "listen how adorably Duprez is singing that line. Oh, Mathilde, idole de mon âme." I was the first to discover Duprez at Naples, and the first to applaud him. "Bravo, bravo." Morrel saw it was useless to say more and refrained. The curtain, which had risen at the close of the scene with Albert, again fell, and a rap was heard at the door. "Come in," said Monte Cristo with a voice that betrayed not the least emotion, and immediately Beauchamp appeared. "Good evening, M. Beauchamp," said Monte Cristo, as if this was the first time he had seen the journalist that evening. "Be seated, Beecham bowed and sitting down, "Sir," said he, "I just now accompanied M. de Morcerf, as you saw." "And that means," replied Monte Cristo, laughing, "that you had, probably, just dined together. I am happy to see, M. Beecham, that you are more sober than he was." "Sir," said M. Beecham, "Albert was wrong, I acknowledge, to betray so much anger, and I come, on my own account, to apologize for him. And having done so, entirely on my own account, be it understood, I would add that I believe you too gentlemanly to refuse giving him some explanation concerning your connection with Yanina. Then I will add 2 words about the young Greek girl." Monte Cristo motioned him to be silent. "Come," said he, laughing, "there are all my hopes about to be destroyed." "How so?" asked Beecham. "Doubtless you wish to make me appear a very eccentric character. I am, in your opinion, a Lara, a Manfred, a Lord Ruthven. Then, just as I am arriving at the climax, you defeat your own end, and seek to make an ordinary man of me. You bring me down to your own level and demand explanations. Indeed, M. Beecham, it is quite laughable." "Yet," replied Beecham haughtily, "there are occasions when probity commands." "M. Beecham," interposed this strange man, "the Count of Monte Cristo bows to none but the Count of Monte Cristo himself. Say no more, I entreat you. I do what I please, M. Beecham, and it is always well done." "Sir," replied the young man, "honest men are not to be paid with such coin. I require honorable guarantees." "I am, sir, a living guarantee," replied Monte Cristo, motionless, but with a threatening look. "We have both blood in our veins which we wish to shed. That is our mutual guarantee. Tell the Viscount so, and that tomorrow, before 10 o'clock, I shall see what color his is." "Then I have only to make arrangements for the duel," said Beecham. "It is quite immaterial to me," said Monte Cristo, "and it was very unnecessary to disturb me at the opera for such a trifle. In France people fight with the sword or pistol, in the colonies with the carbine, in Arabia with the dagger. Tell your client that, although I am the insulted party, in order to carry out my eccentricity, I leave him the choice of arms, and will accept without discussion, without dispute, anything, even combat by drawing lots, which is always stupid, but with me different from other people, as I am sure to gain." "Sure to gain," repeated Beecham, looking with amazement at the Count. "Certainly," said Monte Cristo, slightly shrugging his shoulders. "Otherwise I would not fight with M. de Morcerf. I shall kill him, I cannot help it. Only by a single line this evening at my house let me know the arms and the hour. I do not like to be kept waiting." "Pistols, then, at 8 o'clock in the Bois de Vincennes," said Beecham, quite disconcerted, not knowing if he was dealing with an arrogant braggadocio or a supernatural being. "Very well, sir," said Monte Cristo. "Now all that is settled, do let me see the performance, and tell your friend Albert not to come any more this evening. He will hurt himself with all his ill-chosen barbarisms. Let him go home and go to sleep." Beecham left the box, perfectly amazed. "Now," said Monte Cristo, turning towards Morrel, "I may depend upon you, may I not?" "Certainly," said Morrel. "I am at your service, Count. Still—" "What?" "It is desirable I should know the real cause." "That is to say, you would rather not?" "No. The young man himself is acting blindfolded, and knows not the true cause, which is known only to God and to me. But I give you my word, Morrel, that God, who does know it, will be on our side." "Enough," said Morrel. "Who is your second witness?" "I know no one in Paris, Morrel, on whom I could confer that honor besides you and your brother Emmanuel." "Do you think Emmanuel would oblige me?" "I will answer for him, Count." "Well, that is all I require. Tomorrow morning, at 7 o'clock, you will be with me, will you not?" "We will." "Hush, the curtain is rising. Listen. I never lose a note of this opera if I can avoid it. The music of William Tell is so sweet." Chapter 89. The Night. Monte Cristo waited, according to his usual custom, until Duprez had sung his famous Sauvez-moi. Then he rose and went out. Morrel took leave of him at the door, renewing his promise to be with him the next morning at 7 o'clock, and to bring Emmanuel. Then he stepped into his coupe, calm and smiling, and was at home in 5 minutes. No one who knew the Count could mistake his expression when, on entering, he said, "Ali, bring me my pistols with the ivory cross." Ali brought the box to his master, who examined the weapons with a solicitude very natural to a man who is about to entrust his life to a little powder and shot. These were pistols of an especial pattern, which Monte Cristo had made for target practice in his own room. A cap was sufficient to drive out the bullet, and from the adjoining room no one would have suspected that the Count was, as sportsmen would say, keeping his hand in. He was just taking one up and looking for the point to aim at on a little iron plate which served him as a target, when his study door opened and Baptistin entered. Before he had spoken a word, the Count saw in the next room a veiled woman, who had followed closely after Baptistin, and now, seeing the Count with a pistol in his hand and swords on the table, rushed in. Baptistin looked at his master, who made a sign to him, and he went out, closing the door after him. "Who are you, madame?" said the Count to the veiled woman. 40227M. The stranger cast one look around her, to be certain that they were quite alone. Then bending as if she would have knelt, and joining her hands, she said with an accent of despair, "Edmond, you will not kill my son." The Count retreated a step, uttered a slight exclamation, and let fall the pistol he held. "What name did you pronounce then, Madame de Morcerf?" said he. "Yours," cried she, throwing back her veil. "Yours, which I alone, perhaps, have not forgotten. Edmond, it is not Madame de Morcerf who has come to you, it is Mercedes." "Mercedes is dead, madame," said Monte Cristo. "I know no one now of that name. Mercedes lives, sir, and she remembers, for she alone recognized you when she saw you, and even before she saw you, by your voice, Edmond. By the simple sound of your voice, and from that moment she has followed your steps, watched you, feared you, and she needs not to inquire what hand has dealt the blow which now strikes him, de Morcerf." "Fernand, do you mean?" replied Monte Cristo with bitter irony. "Since we are recalling names, let us remember them all." Monte Cristo had pronounced the name of Fernand with such an expression of hatred that Mercedes felt a thrill of horror run through every vein. "You see, Edmond, I am not mistaken, and have cause to say, 'Spare my son!' And who told you, madame, that I have any hostile intentions against your son? No one, in truth, but a mother has twofold sight. I guessed all. I followed him this evening to the opera, and, concealed in a parquet box, have seen all. If you have seen all, madame, you know that the son of Fernand has publicly insulted me," said Monte Cristo with awful calmness. "Oh, for pity's sake! You have seen that he would have thrown his glove in my face if Morel, one of my friends, had not stopped him. Listen to me, my son has also guessed who you are. He attributes his father's misfortunes to you. Madame, you are mistaken. They are not misfortunes. It is a punishment. It is not I who strike M. de Morcerf. It is Providence which punishes him." "And why do you represent Providence?" cried Mercedes. "Why do you remember when it forgets? What are Yanina and its vizier to you, Edmond? What injury has Fernand Mondego done you in betraying Ali Tepellini?" "Ah, madame," replied Monte Cristo, "all this is an affair between the French captain and the daughter of Vasiliki. It does not concern me, you are right, and if I have sworn to revenge myself, it is not on the French captain or the Count of Morcerf, but on the fisherman Fernand, the husband of Mercedes the Catalane." "Ah, sir," cried the Countess, "how terrible a vengeance for a fault which fatality made me commit! For I am the only culprit, Edmond, and if you owe revenge to anyone, it is to me, who had not fortitude to bear your absence and my solitude." "But," exclaimed Monte Cristo, "why was I absent? And why were you alone?" 40231M. "Because you had been arrested, Edmond, and were a prisoner." "And why was I arrested? Why was I a prisoner?" "I do not know," said Mercedes. "You do not, madame. At least, I hope not. But I will tell you. I was arrested and became a prisoner because, under the arbor of La Reserve, the day before I was to marry you, a man named Danglars wrote this letter, which the fisherman Fernand himself posted. Monte Cristo went to a secrétaire, opened a drawer by a spring, from which he took a paper which had lost its original color, and the ink of which had become of a rusty hue, This he placed in the hands of Mercedes. It was Danglars' letter to the king's attorney, which the Count of Monte Cristo, disguised as a clerk from the house of Thomson and French, had taken from the file against Edmond Dantès, on the day he had paid the 200,000 francs to M. de Beauville. Mercedes read with terror the following lines. The king's attorney is informed by a friend to the throne and religion that one Edmond Dantès, second in command on board the Pharaon, this day arrived from Smyrna, after having touched at Naples and Porto-Ferrajo, is the bearer of a letter from Murat to the usurper, and of another letter from the usurper to the Bonapartist Club in Paris. Ample corroboration of this statement may be obtained by arresting the above-mentioned Edmond Dantès, who either carries the letter for Paris about with him, or has it at his father's abode. Should it not be found in possession of either father or son, then it will assuredly be discovered in the cabin belonging to the said Dantès on board the Pharaon. "How dreadful!" said Mercedes, passing her hand across her brow, moist with perspiration. "And that letter?" "I bought it for 200,000 francs, madame," said Monte Cristo. "But that is a trifle, since it enables me to justify myself to you. And the result of that letter, you well know, madame, was my arrest. But you do not know how long that arrest lasted. You do not know that I remained for 14 years within a quarter of a league of you, in a dungeon in the Château d'If. You do not know that every day of those 14 years I renewed the vow of vengeance which I had made the first day, and yet I was not aware that you had married Fernand, my calumniator, and that my father had died of hunger. Can it be?" cried Mercedes, shuddering. "That is what I heard on leaving my prison 14 years after I had entered it, and that is why, on account of the living Mercedes and my deceased father, I have sworn to revenge myself on Fernand, and I have revenged myself." "And you are sure the unhappy Fernand did that?" "I am satisfied, madame, that he did what I have told you. Besides, that is not much more odious than that a Frenchman by adoption should pass over to the English, that a Spaniard by birth should have fought against the Spaniards, that a stipendiary of Ali should have betrayed and murdered Ali. Compared with such things, what is the letter you have just read? A lover's deception, which the woman who has married that man ought certainly to forgive, but not so the lover who was to have married her. Well, the French did not avenge themselves on the traitor. The Spaniards did not shoot the traitor. Ali in his tomb left the traitor unpunished. But I, betrayed, sacrificed, buried, have risen from my tomb, by the grace of God, to punish that man. He sends me for that purpose, and here I am." The poor woman's head and arms fell. Her legs bent under her, and she fell on her knees. "Forgive, Edmond. Forgive for my sake, who love you still." The dignity of the wife checked the fervor of the lover and the mother. Her forehead almost touched the carpet, when the Count sprang forward and raised her. Then, seated on a chair, she looked at the manly countenance of Monte Cristo, on which grief and hatred still impressed a threatening expression. "Not crush that accursed race?" murmured he. "Abandon my purpose at the moment of its accomplishment? Impossible, madam, impossible." "Edmond," said the poor mother, who tried every means. "When I call you Edmond, why do you not call me Mercedes?" "Mercedes," repeated Monte Cristo. "Mercedes. Well, yes, you are right. That name has still its charms, and this is the first time for a long period that I have pronounced it so distinctly. Oh, Mercedes, I have uttered your name with the sigh of melancholy, with the groan of sorrow, with the last effort of despair. I have uttered it when frozen with cold, crouched on the straw in my dungeon. I have uttered it, consumed with heat, rolling on the stone floor of my prison. Mercedes, I must revenge myself, for I suffered 14 years. 14 years I wept, I cursed. Now I tell you, Mercedes, I must revenge myself." The Count, fearing to yield to the entreaties of her he had so ardently loved, called his sufferings to the assistance of his hatred. "Revenge yourself, then, Edmond," cried the poor mother. "But let your vengeance fall on the culprits, on him, on me, but not on my son." "It is written in the good book," said Monte Cristo, "that the sins of the fathers shall fall upon their children to the third and fourth generation. Since God himself dictated those words to his prophet, why should I seek to make myself better than God?" "Edmond," continued Mercedes, with her arms extended towards the Count, "since I first knew you, I have adored your name, have respected your memory. Edmond, My friend, do not compel me to tarnish that noble and pure image reflected incessantly on the mirror of my heart. Edmond, if you knew all the prayers I have addressed to God for you while I thought you were living and since I have thought you must be dead. Yes, dead. Alas, I imagined your dead body buried at the foot of some gloomy tower, or cast to the bottom of a pit by hateful jailers, and I wept. What could I do for you, Edmond, besides pray and weep? Listen. For 10 years I dreamed each night the same dream. I had been told that you had endeavored to escape, that you had taken the place of another prisoner, that you had slipped into the winding sheet of a dead body, that you had been thrown alive from the top of the Château d'If, and that the cry you uttered as you dashed upon the rocks first revealed to your jailers that they were your murderers. Well, Edmond, I swear to you, by the head of that son for whom I entreat your pity, Edmond, for 10 years I saw every night every detail of that frightful tragedy, and for 10 years I heard every night the cry which awoke me shuddering and cold. And I too, Edmond, oh, believe me, guilty as I was, oh yes, I too have suffered much. Have you known what it is to have your father starve to death in your absence? Cried Monte Cristo, thrusting his hands into his hair. Have you seen the woman you loved giving her hand to your rival while you were perishing at the bottom of a dungeon? No, interrupted Mercedes, but I have seen him whom I loved on the point of murdering my son. Mercedes uttered these words with such deep anguish, with an accent of such intense despair, that Monte Cristo could not restrain a sob. The lion was daunted. The avenger was conquered. What do you ask of me? Said he. Your son's life. Well, he shall live. Mercedes uttered a cry which made the tears start from Monte Cristo's eyes. But these tears disappeared almost instantaneously, for, doubtless, God had sent some angel to collect them. Far more precious were they in his eyes than the richest pearls of Guzerat and Ophir. Oh, said she, seizing the Count's hand and raising it to her lips. Oh, thank you, Edmond. Now you are exactly what I dreamt you were. The man I always loved. Oh, now I may say so. So much the better, replied Monte Cristo, as that poor Edmond will not have long to be loved by you. Death is about to return to the tomb, the phantom to retire in darkness. What do you say, Edmond? I say, since you command me, Mercedes, I must die. Die? And why so? Who talks of dying? Whence have you these ideas of death? You do not suppose that, publicly outraged in the face of a whole theater, in the presence of your friends and those of your son, challenged by a boy who will glory in my forgiveness as if it were a victory, you do not suppose that I can for one moment wish to live. What I most loved after you, Mercedes, was myself, my dignity, and that strength which rendered me superior to other men. That strength was my life. With one word you have crushed it, and I die. But the duel will not take place, Edmond, since you forgive? It will take place, said Monte Cristo in a most solemn tone. But instead of your son's blood to stain the ground, mine will flow. Mercedes shrieked and sprang towards Monte Cristo, but, suddenly stopping, Edmond, said she, there is a God above us, since you live and since I have seen you again. I trust to him from my heart. While waiting his assistance, I trust to your word. You have said that my son should live, have you not? Yes, madam, he shall live, said Monte Cristo, surprised that without more emotion Mercedes had accepted the heroic sacrifice he made for her. Mercedes extended her hand to the Count. Edmond, said she, and her eyes were wet with tears while looking at him to whom she spoke. How noble it is of you, how great the action you have just performed, how sublime to have taken pity on a poor woman who appealed to you with every chance against her. Alas, I am grown old with grief more than with years, and cannot now remind my Edmond by a smile or by a look of that Mercedes whom he once spent so many hours in contemplating. Ah, believe me, Edmond, as I told you, I too have suffered much. I repeat, it is melancholy to pass one's life without having one joy to recall, without preserving a single hope, but that proves that all is not yet over. No, it is not finished. I feel it by what remains in my heart. Oh, I repeat it, Edmond. What you have just done is beautiful. It is grand. It is sublime. Do you say so now, Mercedes? Then what would you say if you knew the extent of the sacrifice I make to you? Suppose that the Supreme Being, after having created the world and fertilized chaos, had paused in the work to spare an angel the tears that might one day flow for mortal sins from her immortal eyes. Suppose that when everything was in readiness and the moment had come for God to look upon his work and see that it was good, suppose he had snuffed out the sun and tossed the world back into eternal night. Then, even then, Mercedes, you could not imagine what I lose in sacrificing my life at this moment. Mercedes looked at the Count in a way which expressed at the same time her astonishment, her admiration, and her gratitude. Monte Cristo pressed his forehead on his burning hands, as if his brain could no longer bear alone the weight of its thoughts. "Edmond," said Mercedes, "I have but one word more to say to you." The Count smiled bitterly. "Edmond," continued she, "you will see that if my face is pale, if my eyes are dull, if my beauty is gone, if Mercedes, in short, no longer resembles her former self in her features, you will see that her heart is still the same. Adieu, then, Edmond. I have nothing more to ask of heaven. I have seen you again, and have found you as noble and as great as formerly you were. Adieu, Edmond, adieu, and thank you." But the Count did not answer. Mercedes opened the door of the study, and had disappeared before he had recovered from the painful and profound reverie into which his thwarted vengeance had plunged him. The clock of the Invalides struck one when the carriage which conveyed Madame de Morcerf rolled away on the pavement of the Champs-Élysées, and made Monte Cristo raise his head. "What a fool I was," said he, "not to tear my heart out on the day when I resolved to avenge myself." Chapter 90. The Meeting. After Mercedes had left Monte Cristo, he fell into profound gloom. Around him and within him the flight of thought seemed to have stopped. His energetic mind slumbered, as the body does after extreme fatigue. "What?" said he to himself, while the lamp and the wax lights were nearly burnt out, and the servants were waiting impatiently in the anteroom. "What? This edifice which I have been so long preparing, which I have reared with so much care and toil, is to be crushed by a single touch, a word, a breath. Yes, this self, of whom I thought so much, of whom I was so proud, who had appeared so worthless in the dungeons of the Château d'If, and whom I had succeeded in making so great, will be but a lump of clay tomorrow. Alas, it is not the death of the body I regret, for is not the destruction of the vital principle, the repose to which everything is tending, to which every unhappy being aspires? Is not this the repose of matter after which I so long sighed, and which I was seeking to attain by the painful process of starvation when Faria appeared in my dungeon? What is death for me? One step farther into rest, two, perhaps, into silence. No, it is not existence, then, that I regret, but the ruin of projects so slowly carried out, so laboriously framed. Providence is now opposed to them, when I most thought it would be propitious. It is not God's will that they should be accomplished. This burden, almost as heavy as a world, which I had raised, and I had thought to bear to the end, was too great for my strength, and I was compelled to lay it down in the middle of my career. Oh, shall I then again become a fatalist, whom 14 years of despair and 10 of hope had rendered a believer in Providence? And all this, because my heart, which I thought dead, was only sleeping, because it has awakened and has begun to beat again, because I have yielded to the pain of the emotion excited in my breast by a woman's voice. Yet, continued the Count, becoming each moment more absorbed in the anticipation of the dreadful sacrifice for the morrow, which Mercedes had accepted, yet, it is impossible that so noble-minded a woman should thus through selfishness consent to my death when I am in the prime of life and strength. It is impossible that she can carry to such a point maternal love, or rather delirium. There are virtues which become crimes by exaggeration. No, she must have conceived some pathetic scene. She will come and throw herself between us, and what would be sublime here will there appear ridiculous. The blush of pride mounted to the Count's forehead as this thought passed through his mind. "Ridiculous?" repeated he. "And the ridicule will fall on me. I ridiculous? No, I would rather die." By thus exaggerating to his own mind the anticipated ill fortune of the next day, to which he had condemned himself by promising Mercedes to spare her son, the Count at last exclaimed, "Folly, folly, folly! To carry generosity so far as to put myself up as a mark for that young man to aim at. He will never believe that my death was suicide, and yet it is important for the honor of my memory. And this surely is not vanity but a justifiable pride. It is important the world should know that I have consented, by my free will, to stop my arm already raised to strike, and that with the arm which has been so powerful against others I have struck myself. It must be. It shall be. Seizing a pen, he drew a paper from a secret drawer in his desk, and wrote at the bottom of the document, which was no other than his will, made since his arrival in Paris, a sort of codicil clearly explaining the nature of his death. I do this, oh my God, said he, with his eyes raised to heaven, as much for thy honor as for mine. I have during 10 years considered myself the agent of thy vengeance, and other wretches, like Morcerf, Danglars, Villefort, even Morcerf himself, must not imagine that chance has freed them from their enemy. Let them know, on the contrary, that their punishment, which had been decreed by Providence, is only delayed by my present determination, and although they escape it in this world, it awaits them in another, and that they are only exchanging time for eternity. While he was thus agitated by gloomy uncertainties, wretched waking dreams of grief, the first rays of morning pierced his windows, and shone upon the pale blue paper on which he had just inscribed his justification of Providence. It was just 5 o'clock in the morning when a slight noise like a stifled sigh reached his ear. He turned his head, looked around him, and saw no one, but the sound was repeated distinctly enough to convince him of its reality. He arose and, quietly opening the door of the drawing-room, saw Haydée, who had fallen on a chair, with her arms hanging down and her beautiful head thrown back. She had been standing at the door to prevent his going out without seeing her, until sleep, which the young cannot resist, had overpowered her frame, wearied as she was with watching. The noise of the door did not awaken her, and Monte Cristo gazed at her with affectionate regret. She remembered that she had a son, said he, and I forgot I had a daughter. Then, shaking his head sorrowfully, poor Haydée, said he. She wished to see me, to speak to me. She has feared or guessed something. Oh, I cannot go without taking leave of her. I cannot die without confiding her to someone. He quietly regained his seat, and wrote under the other lines, I bequeath to Maximilian Morrel, captain of Spahis, and son of my former patron, Pierre Morrel, shipowner at Marseilles, the sum of 20 millions, a part of which may be offered to his sister Julie and brother-in-law Emmanuel, if he does not fear this increase of fortune may mar their happiness. These 20 millions are concealed in my grotto at Monte Cristo, of which Bertuccio knows the secret. If his heart is free, and he will marry Haydée, the daughter of Ali Pasha of Yanina, whom I have brought up with the love of a father, and who has shown the love and tenderness of a daughter for me, he will thus accomplish my last wish. This will has already constituted Haydée heiress of the rest of my fortune, consisting of lands, funds in England, Austria, and Holland, furniture in my different palaces and houses, and which without the 20 millions and the legacies to my servants, may still amount to 60 millions. 40241M. He was finishing the last line when a cry behind him made him start, and the pen fell from his hand. Haydée, said he, did you read it? Oh, my lord, said she, why are you writing thus at such an hour? Why are you bequeathing all your fortune to me? Are you going to leave me? I am going on a journey, dear child, said Monte Cristo, with an expression of infinite tenderness and melancholy. And if any misfortune should happen to me, the Count stopped. Well? Asked the young girl, with an authoritative tone the Count had never observed before, and which startled him. Well, if any misfortune happened to me, replied Monte Cristo, I wish my daughter to be happy. Haydée smiled sorrowfully, and shook her head. Do you think of dying, my lord? Said she. The wise man, my child, has said, it is good to think of death. Well, if you die, said she, bequeath your fortune to others, for if you die I shall require nothing. And, taking the paper, she tore it in 4 pieces, and threw it into the middle of the room. Then, the effort having exhausted her strength, she fell, not asleep this time, but fainting on the floor. The Count leaned over her and raised her in his arms, and seeing that sweet pale face, those lovely eyes closed, that beautiful form motionless and to all appearance lifeless, the idea occurred to him for the first time, that perhaps she loved him otherwise than as a daughter loves a father. Alas, murmured he with intense suffering, I might then have been happy yet. Then he carried Haidee to her room, resigned her to the care of her attendants, and returning to his study, which he shut quickly this time, he again copied the destroyed will. As he was finishing, the sound of a cabriolet entering the yard was heard. Monte Cristo approached the window and saw Maximilian and Emmanuel alight. Good, said he, it was time. And he sealed his will with 3 seals. A moment afterwards he heard a noise in the drawing-room, and went to open the door himself. Morrel was there. He had come 20 minutes before the time appointed. I am perhaps come too soon, Count, said he, but I frankly acknowledge that I have not closed my eyes all night, nor has anyone in my house. I need to see you strong in your courageous assurance, to recover myself. Monte Cristo could not resist this proof of affection. He not only extended his hand to the young man, but flew to him with open arms. Morrel, said he, it is a happy day for me, to feel that I am beloved by such a man as you. Good morning, Emmanuel. You will come with me then, Maximilian? Did you doubt it? Said the young captain. But if I were wrong, I watched you during the whole scene of that challenge yesterday. I have been thinking of your firmness all night, and I said to myself that justice must be on your side, or man's countenance is no longer to be relied on. But Morrel Albert is your friend? Simply an acquaintance, sir. You met on the same day you first saw me? Yes, that is true, but I should not have recollected it if you had not reminded me. Thank you, Morrel. Then ringing the bell once, Look, said he to Ali, who came immediately. Take that to my solicitor. It is my will, Morrel. When I am dead, you will go and examine it. What? Said Morrel. You dead? Yes. Must I not be prepared for everything, dear friend? But what did you do yesterday after you left me? I went to Tortoni's, where, as I expected, I found Beauchamp and Chateau Renaud. I own I was seeking them. Why, when all was arranged. Listen, Count. The affair is serious and unavoidable. Did you doubt it? No. The offense was public, and everyone is already talking of it. Well, I hope to get an exchange of arms, to substitute the sword for the pistol. The pistol is blind. Have you succeeded? Asked Monte Cristo quickly, with an imperceptible gleam of hope. No, for your skill with the sword is so well known. Ah, who has betrayed me? The skillful swordsman whom you have conquered. And you failed. They positively refused. Morrel, said the Count, have you ever seen me fire a pistol? Never. Well, we have time. Look. Monte Cristo took the pistols he held in his hand when Mercedes entered, and fixing an ace of clubs against the iron plate. With 4 shots he successively shot off the 4 sides of the club. At each shot Morrel turned pale. He examined the bullets with which Monte Cristo performed this dexterous feat, and saw that they were no larger than buckshot. It is astonishing, said he. Look, Emmanuel. Then turning towards Monte Cristo, Count, said he, in the name of all that is dear to you, I entreat you not to kill Albert. The unhappy youth has a mother. You are right, said Monte Cristo, and I have none. These words were uttered in a tone which made Morrel shudder. You are the offended party, Count. Doubtless. What does that imply? That you will fire first. I fire first? Oh, I obtained, or rather claimed that. We had conceded enough for them to yield us that. And at what distance? 20 paces. A smile of terrible import passed over the Count's lips. Morrel, said he, do not forget what you have just seen. The only chance for Albert's safety, then, will arise from your emotion. I suffer from emotion, said Monte Cristo, or from your generosity, my friend. To so good a marksman as you are, I may say what would appear absurd to another. What is that? Break his arm, wound him, but do not kill him. I will tell you, Morrel, said the Count, that I do not need entreating to spare the life of M. de Morcerf. He shall be so well spared that he will return quietly with his 2 friends, while I, and you, that will be another thing. I shall be brought home. No, no, cried Maximilian, quite unable to restrain his feelings. As I told you, my dear Morel, de Morcerf will kill me. Morel looked at him in utter amazement. But what has happened, then, since last evening, Count? The same thing that happened to Brutus the night before the Battle of Philippi. I have seen a ghost. And that ghost told me, Morel, that I had lived long enough. Maximilian and Emmanuel looked at each other. Monte Cristo drew out his watch. Let us go, said he. It is 5 minutes past 7, and the appointment was for 8 o'clock. A carriage was in readiness at the door. Monte Cristo stepped into it with his 2 friends. He had stopped a moment in the passage to listen at a door, and Maximilian and Emmanuel, who had considerately passed forward a few steps, thought they heard him answer by a sigh to a sob from within. As the clock struck 8, they drove up to the place of meeting. We are first, said Morel, looking out of the window. Excuse me, sir, said Baptistin, who had followed his master with indescribable terror, but I think I see a carriage down there under the trees. Monte Cristo sprang lightly from the carriage and offered his hand to assist Emmanuel and Maximilian. The latter retained the Count's hand between his. I like, said he, to feel a hand like this, when its owner relies on the goodness of his cause. It seems to me, said Emmanuel, that I see 2 young men down there, who are evidently waiting. Monte Cristo drew Morel a step or 2 behind his brother-in-law. Maximilian, said he, are your affections disengaged? Morel looked at Monte Cristo with astonishment. I do not seek your confidence, my dear friend. I only ask you a simple question. Answer it. That is all I require. I love a young girl, Count. Do you love her much? More than my life. Another hope defeated, said the Count. Then, with a sigh, Poor Haydée, murmured he. To tell the truth, Count, if I knew less of you, I should think that you were less brave than you are. Because I sigh when thinking of someone I am leaving? Come, Morel, it is not like a soldier to be so bad a judge of courage. Do I regret life? What is it to me, who have passed 20 years between life and death? Moreover, do not alarm yourself, Morel. This weakness, if it is such, is betrayed to you alone. I know the world is a drawing-room, from which we must retire politely and honestly. That is, with a bow, and our debts of honor paid. That is to the purpose. Have you brought your arms? What for? I hope these gentlemen have theirs. I will inquire, said Morel. Do. But make no treaty. You understand me? You need not fear. Morel advanced towards Beauchamp and Châteaurenaud, who, seeing his intention, came to meet him. The 3 young men bowed to each other courteously, if not affably. Excuse me, gentlemen, said Morel, but I do not see de Morcerf. He sent us word this morning, replied Châteaurenaud, that he would meet us on the ground. Ah, said Morel. Beauchamp pulled out his watch. It is only 5 minutes past 8, said he to Morel. There is not much time lost yet. Oh, I made no illusion of that kind, replied Morel. There is a carriage coming, said Châteaurenaud. It advanced rapidly along one of the avenues leading towards the open space where they were assembled. You are doubtless provided with pistols, gentlemen? De Monte Cristo yields his right of using his. We had anticipated this kindness on the part of the Count, said Beauchamp, and I have brought some weapons which I bought 8 or 10 days since, thinking to want them on a similar occasion. They are quite new, and have not yet been used. Will you examine them? Oh, Beauchamp, if you assure me that de Morcerf does not know these pistols, you may readily believe that your word will be quite sufficient. Gentlemen, said Châteaurenaud, it is not Morcerf coming in that carriage. Faith, it is Franz and Debray. The 2 young men he announced were indeed approaching. What chance brings you here, gentlemen? Said Châteaurenaud, shaking hands with each of them. Because, said Debray, Albert sent this morning to request us to come. Beauchamp and Châteaurenaud exchanged looks of astonishment. I think I understand his reason, said Morel. What is it? Yesterday afternoon I received a letter from de Morcerf, begging me to attend the opera. And I, said Debray. And I also, said Franz. And we, too, added Beecham and Chateaurenaud. Having wished you all to witness the challenge, he now wishes you to be present at the combat. Exactly so, said the young men. You have probably guessed right. But, after all these arrangements, he does not come himself, said Chateaurenaud. Albert is 10 minutes after time. There he comes, said Beecham, on horseback, at full gallop, followed by a servant. How imprudent, said Chateaurenaud. To come on horseback to fight a duel with pistols, after all the instructions I had given him. And besides, said Beecham, with a collar above his cravat, an open coat and white waistcoat, why has he not painted a spot upon his heart? It would have been more simple. Meanwhile Albert had arrived within 10 paces of the group formed by the 5 young men. He jumped from his horse, threw the bridle on his servant's arms, and joined them. He was pale, and his eyes were red and swollen. It was evident that he had not slept. A shade of melancholy gravity overspread his countenance, which was not natural to him. I thank you, gentlemen, said he, for having complied with my request. I feel extremely grateful for this mark of friendship. Morel had stepped back as Morcerf approached, and remained at a short distance. And to you also, M. Morel, my thanks are due. Come, there cannot be too many. For 0248 M. Sir, said Maximilian, you are not perhaps aware that I am M. de Monte Cristo's friend? I was not sure, but I thought it might be so. So much the better. The more honorable men there are here, the better I shall be satisfied. M. Morel, said Chateaurenaud, will you apprise the Count of Monte Cristo that M. de Morcerf is arrived, and we are at his disposal? Morel was preparing to fulfill his commission. Beecham had meanwhile drawn the box of pistols from the carriage. Stop, gentlemen, said Albert. I have 2 words to say to the Count of Monte Cristo. In private? Asked Morel. No, sir. Before all who are here. Albert's witnesses looked at each other. Franz and Debray exchanged some words in a whisper, and Morel, rejoiced at this unexpected incident, went to fetch the Count, who was walking in a retired path with Emmanuel. What does he want with me? Said Monte Cristo. I do not know, but he wishes to speak to you. Ah, said Monte Cristo. I trust he is not going to tempt me by some fresh insult. I do not think that such is his intention, said Morel. The Count advanced, accompanied by Maximilian and Emmanuel. His calm and serene look formed a singular contrast to Albert's grief-stricken face, who approached also, followed by the other 4 young men. When at 3 paces distant from each other, Albert and the Count stopped. Approach, gentlemen, said Albert. I wish you not to lose one word of what I am about to have the honor of saying to the Count of Monte Cristo, for it must be repeated by you to all who will listen to it, strange as it may appear to you. Proceed, sir, said the Count. Sir, said Albert, at first with a tremulous voice, but which gradually became firmer, I reproached you with exposing the conduct of M. de Morcerf in Epirus, for guilty as I knew he was, I thought you had no right to punish him, but I have since learned that you had that right. It is not Fernand Mondégo's treachery towards Ali Pasha which induces me so readily to excuse you, but the treachery of the fisherman Fernand towards you, and the almost unheard-of miseries which were its consequences. And I say, and proclaim it publicly, that you were justified in revenging yourself on my father, and I, his son, thank you for not using greater severity. Had a thunderbolt fallen in the midst of the spectators of this unexpected scene, it would not have surprised them more than did Albert's declaration. As for Monte Cristo, his eyes slowly rose towards heaven with an expression of infinite gratitude. He could not understand how Albert's fiery nature, of which he had seen so much among the Roman bandits, had suddenly stooped to this humiliation. He recognized the influence of Mercedes, and saw why her noble heart had not opposed the sacrifice she knew beforehand would be useless. Now, sir, said Albert, if you think my apology sufficient, pray give me your hand. Next to the merit of infallibility which you appear to possess, I rank that of candidly acknowledging a fault. But this confession concerns me only. I acted well as a man, but you have acted better than man. An angel alone could have saved one of us from death. That angel came from heaven, if not to make us friends, which, alas, fatality renders impossible, at least to make us esteem each other. Monte Cristo, with moistened eye, heaving breast, and lips half open, extended to Albert a hand which the latter pressed with a sentiment resembling respectful fear. "Gentlemen," said he, "M. de Monte Cristo receives my apology. I had acted hastily towards him. Hasty actions are generally bad ones. Now my fault is repaired. I hope the world will not call me cowardly for acting as my conscience dictated. But if anyone should entertain a false opinion of me," added he, drawing himself up as if he would challenge both friends and enemies, "I shall endeavor to correct his mistake." "What happened during the night?" asked Beauchamp of Châteaurenaud. "We appear to make a very sorry figure here. In truth, what Albert has just done is either very despicable or very noble," replied the Baron. "What can it mean?" said Debray to Franz. "The Count of Monte Cristo acts dishonorably to M. de Morcerf, and is justified by his son. Had I 10 Yanninus in my family, I should only consider myself the more bound to fight 10 times. As for Monte Cristo, his head was bent down, his arms were powerless. Bowing under the weight of 24 years' reminiscences, he thought not of Albert, of Beauchamp, of Châteaurenaud, or of any of that group, but he thought of that courageous woman who had come to plead for her son's life, to whom he had offered his, and who had now saved it by the revelation of a dreadful family secret, capable of destroying forever in that young man's heart every feeling of filial piety. "Providence still," murmured he. "Now only am I fully convinced of being the emissary of God."